And howdy, everybody. Welcome to another show. I am joined by a special guest tonight, HogTie Champ. Say hello, HogTie.
Hello, good evening, bonsoir. Il y a des petits oiseaux dans ma fenêtre. You know what? I got to calm down. I'm way too excited to join Jefferson Spatchcock.
This show is not classy enough for French, sir. You need to take that back. HogTie and I are probably, well, HogTie might be a little bit more excited, but I think we were both equally thrilled when last night Tom Rabbit dropped a video. It was a recording of Ozymandias Ramses II, more affectionately referred to as Ozzy. YouTube personality. He's a little bit more intermittent these days. He's got other commitments and other hobbies that he prefers, mostly like the outdoors and I think his wife. So he spends more time in the real world than doing this kind of stuff. But his brief time on YouTube was pretty influential for a lot of people. And he has a master's degree in, I think, analytical philosophy, but he didn't pursue it past that point. I think he looked into doing a PhD thing, but he backed away from that. But he did a lot of videos and engaged in a lot of these kinds of discourses on YouTube. And he himself was an atheist. Well, he popped into Clubhouse, and so he's on Clubhouse now, and sure enough, he ended up on a channel with everybody's favorite Darth Dawkins, and the two of them, it's not the first time that they've talked. So they've had discussions before. Some of them are quite infamous, mostly for how badly they went for Darth. Ozzy's a pretty clever dude. So other than that, that's pretty much that kind of sets the stage of what the video is going to be about. I don't need any introductions. I'm going to turn it over to HogTie to introduce himself, since he's the special guest, and then to kind of give like maybe a little bit more of a rundown of who Ozzy is, since he has known him longer and probably knows him better. So take it away, HogTie.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. A lot of people will recognize me, but I've not been doing these shows for a very, very long time. A lot of people will be familiar with the Magic Sandwich Show. Ozzy and I had joined the Magic Sandwich Show around when it stopped being popular. I like to think that was a coincidence. I know Ozzy likes to think that. But a lot of people think that's where he and I met. We'd actually known each other for years. He and DPR Jones. DPR Jones was the producer and host of the Magic Sandwich Show, which was kind of science and social issues. And unfortunately got famous for taking on, dingbat young earth creationists and stuff. And it kind of got to be this anti-religious show, which it wasn't. It was science and social issues. And so, as I say, we've known Ozzy for years. He's from northwestern Ontario. I know Ontario sort of has a reputation of being sort of more urbanite and whatnot, but it's a big place. And the Northwest is very rough and rugged and rural. And so he's a really outdoorsy guy, smart like the crack of a whip. Jefferson, you'd mentioned that Ozzy has a master's degree. And I'll tell you one thing I've never heard from Ozzy is, oh, well, I have a master's degree.
You won't hear that.
Yeah. He did what he did, and he does what he does, and he's just a charming fellow, and so articulate, and he's a wonderful guy to know. Now, in terms of his interactions with Dee Dee, there is one pretty famous clip out there where he comes in and he asks a question, and he had to wait to ask the question of Darth, and it was a question that Jack Angstreich had asked, and Darth just refused to ask it. And then, partway through, Ozzy was just like, well, look, if you want to be rude, I don't care. I don't want to talk to you. Right. It was a pretty good move. And that video is worth watching. It's about 20 minutes. So I think Jefferson and I are just going to mute for the next 20 minutes while you guys watch that. And then come back and watch the rest of this. We're not doing it. It's a good video to watch. So we'll watch it after this.
Yeah, and most of the videos that he's available on, I mean, a search in YouTube will find them. Like if you look up Darth Dawkins and Ozymandias, you usually will find most of them, if not all of them. Yeah. So I don't know.
Aside from that, if you find his channel and you're interested in this stuff like epistemology and reasons to believe this or not believe that, he actually has some videos where it's just him in his chair, just pontificating.
Mm-hmm. And for anybody that is interested. Yeah, I did post his link to Ozymandias' channel in the description. So if anybody's interested after watching this, if you want to see his greatest hits, which is pretty much just his entire catalog, I think there's only 50 some videos on his entire on his channel proper. There's more videos of him out there because he would get picked up and asked to do interviews with. I think he did a couple with Anthony Magnabosco. He had several back and forths with Matt Dillahunty between his show and Matt Dillahunty's. And I think there's several videos out there that aren't on his channel, which it's him, Alex Malpass, and Matt Dillahunty, and those are pretty good too.
Yeah, they're really good.
So yeah, but his channel link's in there. So if you want to take a look at that, maybe subscribe to him. He rarely does anything anymore, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people kind of will always give him props because he's helped people kind of negotiate their way through, especially if they were just getting introduced to presuppositional apologetics or a tag argument from kind of a more aggressive apologist, and they got a little scared straight by the whole thing. They could usually go to Ozzy and be like, "Hey, can you explain this crap to me?" And then Ozzy would pretty patiently break it down.
Well, the neat thing about him breaking things down too is I think and you'll really notice it in this conversation too. If you want to talk to Ozzy about philosophy or about mosquito netting or how to poop in the forest, he's just like, okay, yeah, I like talking about that stuff. I like knowing the truth. He'll tell you. I like you wanting to learn the truth. Let's explore this together. And he's very, very candid about it. And it's so ectopic in this world where you're discussing things with somebody on the internet, and to them it's a game. To them, it's like, well, you say what you're going to say, and I'm going to wait to hear the keyword that I can say so that I can turn around and say, well, that's a non-informative response. And he just, it's oil and water. And yet when he's in it, he handles it so well by just staying honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can tell in this one, he gets a little bit frustrated, but he keeps his cool. And the cool thing about Ozzy is that even when he gets flustered, he stays honest. He's even honest when he's ticked off. He'll just be like, "Look, I don't want well, I don't want to give away any spoilers. Everybody will see that when he's engaging with this one." But I think it's been quite a long time in between interactions for Ozzy and Darth. So yeah, this was pretty cool one to see. So I hope I don't expect he's going to be available in a lot of Clubhouse rooms, but we'll see. But when he is, I hope I do get to run into him and say hi to him. So his not every experience on Clubhouse is somebody like Darth trying to ambush him. So,
yeah, but and I know we're eager to get this thing started. The thing is, it's really short. I shouldn't say how long it is. I guess, do people know what happens? And I don't want to. I take your cue. Don't give spoilers. But because we mentioned honesty, there is a point I want to make, sort of prep before, because if you look at the comment section of this discussion between Dee and Ozzy, you see a lot of comments about, oh, Ozzy's so polite. What a polite guy. Yeah, he's a Canadian. He's so polite. And I gotta help the audience out a little bit here by telling you something that I think a lot of people don't realize about what Canadians think politeness is. Honesty is a component of politeness, and being coy, at least here, being coy is seen as being not trusting or not respecting the other person's judgment, and we're just not fans of that, right? And you got to sort of realize, like, Canadians will be very blunt, because when you really trust and respect somebody, then you just tell them how you feel. You don't have to be a dick about it, right? But and especially guys my age or Ozzy's age, probably about half the Canadians in your audience, especially the men my age, will have caught a punch in the face for running your mouth, right? And about a quarter of them have probably sputted a guy. About a quarter have probably sputted a guy for doing something like that.
Sputted?
Oh, yeah. So, okay. I know Americans will say, like, sucker punch, right, when you're not expecting it, right?
Okay.
When you spud somebody, like, have you ever been hit in the face with a potato when you didn't expect it? Because it's worse than you think. So a spudding, yeah, it's worse. But a spudding is when you hit a guy in the face without telegraphing it first, right? But
gotcha.
It's like after that last thing you said, you should have seen it coming, you dumb cacksucker. So that's what a spudding is.
All right. And well, before we get this started, I'm going to give a shout out to a few people that were here early. For everybody that's here in the live chat, Floyd FP HogTie, he's here. I feel very honored that I think it's safe to say he's a fan of my show or my channel. And I'm currently trying to get him set up with a debate with a lunatic, but we'll see. A guy that debated Michael, the Canadian Atheist, on my channel. I host a debate between the two of them. His name is Terry Elias, or Mr. Delithieu. I think Floyd is kind of interested in, maybe, I think he's got a dopamine kick. He wants to tear that argument from his apart. So Floyd's here. Great to see you. Michael Deaton. Everybody's here. Let's see. get through some of our conversation. Granadicius, AJ, Clout, Grey Knight, Peebo, Justin, Alex Baptista, Maya, always good to see you.
Oh my goodness, this is like the beginning of Romper Room.
Yeah.
I see AJ and I see Jay and I see, Simos Funk is here. No, it's his birthday.
Oh, is it? Happy birthday!
Do you have
Simon.
Romper Room in the U.S.? Do you have Romper Room in the States?
We did, but it's a little. I mean, yeah, I guess it is before my time. I think that's something that I've got an older sibling. I think she was a fan. Doubting Thomas, good to see you. Michael's here. Michael, Canadian Atheist, Sorted Singer, Tyler West. I apologize if I miss any of you, but I'll wrap that up there. But hello to everybody in here. I love the live chat. It's always pretty eventful. So I guess we can get going with this.
Sure. Sorry, after I clear up, everybody's in the chats on about how you guys hit each other with potatoes. No, your fist is the spud. I thought that was clear.
Oh, you shouldn't have cleared that up. You should just let them know, like, when you're in, because then they'd be telling their friends and family, when you're in Canada, people, you know that Canadians are offended with you because they'll hit you with a potato.
Win you with a potato, yeah.
Like, that means they want you to leave their country, and you should probably do it, because then the next thing will be worse than a potato. Worse.
To wing means to throw. Yeah. Okay.
So same rules apply. If our volume is not great, holler. If I forgot to share out the volume or for whatever reason it fails, like it did last time, I shared out a window instead of a tab and it stopped working, let us know. But I'm going to get this started. Let's shrink us and enlarge the screen. I'm going to put that in full screen. Why not? Get rid of the rest of that stuff. Okay, folks, here we go. And I don't think I'm not going to speed this up because
savor.
Darth,
savor.
Yeah, it's important to savor. Darth, I think, speaks a little slow from time to time, but Ozzy, being a Canadian, speaks at what I consider a normal speed. So, all right, folks, here we go.
Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit!
I happen to just wander in. I have no idea what you were talking about or what the conversation is, so I don't want to derail.
We were just talking about general. No, you're not derailing it. We're just talking in general about how a lot of atheists on Clubhouse and Discord reason. So why don't you tell us about your atheism?
About my atheism? Well, I'm of the view that there's probably no God. I don't know what more you want to know exactly.
So there's
go ahead.
No God because so God does not exist because.
I think that.
There's the classic. I remember what I forgot to do. And I'm rude to do this. Brett Wilcox, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate your channel, Mr. Spatchcock. Thank you. I appreciate that super chat. I hope you enjoy this this little flashback. This feels all very nostalgic. We got some old school heavy hitters going at it. So, although they're not. I don't know. Ozzy is a heavy hitter, but he's very polite about it, as usual. So,
most conceptions of gods are incoherent, contain contradictions. Independently of that, I think there's insufficient evidence or warrant for believing that a God does exist. And there's just plenty of evidence that a God is the kind of thing that we would make up, because we as a species are very given to inventing all kinds of fantastical creatures of various scope and power, everything from dragons and pixies and elves and Bigfoot and you name it, to witches and all the way up to gods, and including an omni-god.
Okay, so your position is that there are no gods. Okay, so
yeah,
is it your?
Yeah, it's a provisional position. It's a provisional position. It's not something that I think I can demonstrate to be categorically true, but I think it's
nice.
More likely to be true than not.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the very first point. This is pretty much like almost most of the conversation here is going to kind of hinge on this. It's a very important point. It's a very clear distinction that Ozzy has given to Darth. Now watch Darth miss that point completely for the next 20 minutes. HogTie, you got anything?
Oh, well, I would sound envy here. I tried the same thing. Ozzy and I, by the way, when you hear from him, I'm going to sound like I'm going to hurt my shoulder, pat myself on the back. But Ozzy and I have exactly the same position. We use exactly the same arguments. I mean, I'm certainly envious of him because he's equipped with the language to make his answers very concise and so lucid. You know, it's very clear. But that when I did this, I said something like, "Well, no, you're looking for a deductive argument, a sound deductive argument. I don't know of one that would lend itself to, well, there's definitely no gods, nowhere, no how." Ozzy simply said, "Look, yeah, you know, people have invented gods before, and so I don't think there are any, and that's a provisional thing." Very tidy way of saying that. And by the way, that is how we reason. Every time you go to cross the street and you look both ways and think you're not going to get hit by a car, you don't do so because of some sound deductive reasoning that you possess. It's because you have the provisional belief through induction that you will be able to do so safely. That's how we live.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I've made the observation to some guys that I've, you know, when I have had some conversations with them, you know, people like J. Robin, where and I've made the observation on some of my other channels where I think this is kind of I don't know that there's a universal starting point for most skeptics, but I think that that's one thing that I think a lot of people kind of agree, whether or not they think it's a starting point or something like that. But the notion that, you know, one of the reasons they doubt the actual existence of a God is because of quite a bit of convincing evidence that shows that it might just be, you know, these might just be stories, right? And humans, like Ozzy said, we have a tendency to create these kinds of things. So there's good evidence to suggest that that's all that is. Much less, you know, evidence to suggest that it's actually the case. And I think this is interesting too, because like Darth's not really even given them a lot of pushback on this. Like Darth hasn't started screaming about, "I want you to provide me with an ontological argument for why God doesn't exist," or "I want you to provide me with a deductive argument for the ontological existence of God," you know, like he did a couple of videos back. With this one, he's letting Ozzy go. And the more I think about this, the more I think that probably more than anything kind of shows where Darth has like kind of a tough time with these concepts, right? Like the stance that Ozzy's putting out there is not an unreasonable one, but Darth is now going to have to get into he's going to put himself in a position where he's going to have to try to make Ozzy's position seem irrational. And
yeah,
Ozzy's definitely not going to make that easy, right? Because it already sounds like, oh, okay, well that's simple enough. That sounds cool. You know, go for Darth, and Darth's going to do his best to try to turn Ozzy into a rude monster, which, I mean, everybody's rude to Darth, according to Darth. So,
well, one will either affirm or deny all gods, or one will lay out a claim where they are suspending judgment. So do you affirm or deny the existence of God, or do you claim to suspend judgment?
No, I don't suspend judgment. I'm not agnostic. I'm not sort of on the fence and sort of undecided. I think it's very, very likely that there isn't a God, just like I think it's very, very likely that there isn't a Bigfoot. I don't have a demonstration that Bigfoot doesn't exist, but I have what I think to be sufficient warrant for thinking Bigfoot doesn't exist.
There are good reasons to believe Bigfoot doesn't exist.
And yeah, exactly. I think there are good reasons for thinking Bigfoot doesn't exist, which is why I think, but I don't have a demonstration that Bigfoot's an impossibility or something like that.
Okay.
So in other words, I can deny. Just let me clarify here. I can deny the existence of something. I can affirm that something doesn't exist without knowing to a moral certainty that it's impossible or anything like that.
Okay. So you affirm that there is no God. So
right.
On what rational grounds can you assert that what is fundamental to everything is not an eternal mind that we call God? Okay. So how would you rationally justify that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What would be the justification to assert that what is fundamental to everything is not an eternal mind that we call God?
I just don't think that there's any reason to think that a mind is necessary and fundamental to the existence of anything else.
Now that answer is kind of similar. I can't remember which one it was, but the series of videos that Tom had picked up where Darth, it was Canadian Catholic, was having discussions with some of these philosophers, and he would bring Darth in to basically kind of start a fight with him, and Darth would usually make an ass out of himself. But in a couple of those exchanges, this particular answer from Ozzy sounds pretty similar to one of theirs. And Darth's not as triggered here as he was in that conversation, because that automatically, I think he automatically tried to go to the well, any kind of appeal to evidence will, oh, well, we don't have evidence of this, or there's no reason for that, or something like that. And Darth will usually try to slip that into, oh, so since you're not convinced of it, that then it follows it doesn't exist, kind of thing. I mean, Darth's really quick to try to like get that, try to, hang that fallacy off somebody, even though it's, it's pretty clear that that's not what's happening. But yeah, let's see how he handles this with Ozzy, because Ozzy was clearer than most in giving that one.
Okay, so the not God world is, from your point of view, the not God world is invoked to be true solely on the grounds that you're unconvinced of the God world?
No, it's just that I don't think it more probable that I don't think it's more probable that we would find the world that we do on the hypothesis or on the posit that a God exists. In other words, I don't find it there. I don't find there. I don't. Oh, well, maybe I'm not. So try me again, or maybe reformulate the question.
You're affirming the not God world as opposed to the God world. Okay, so giving me a probabilistic assessment is not a logical necessity, right?
No, it's not. I started out by saying that my atheism is provisional. It's not. Okay. It's just as a believer can believe. No, you're asking me questions. Allow me to flesh out the answers, please.
I'm listening.
Okay, so just as a believer can believe that a God exists on.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I should have let that go. There was the first brushback, and actually, as people listen to this, really sort of attend to. By the way, your audience, if there are human beings in your audience who've had conversation with human beings, you'll sort of know the rhythm of how human conversations go. And we do kind of have this thing like where you interject, like sometimes a guy's talking and you're like, but he's still talking. So you kind of cue the other person that you have something you want to say. And that other, Ozzy's excellent at this. That other person will then know, like sometimes you'll interject across Ozzy and you'll go, well, hang on a second, I'm just about done. And then he'll sort of race to the finish and then you'll say, sorry, go ahead. And so he knows how humans talk to each other. Darth has struggles with that. And yes, Ozzy in this conversation, based on his familiarity, see, that just happened right there. You started talking and then you stopped and you cued me that you want to talk. This is how the humans work. Ozzy knows that Darth has a bad habit about this. So he cinches up a little bit more than Ozzy normally would. Ozzy's a little softer like this when he talks to other people who know how to converse.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I still wonder if it's if Darth kind of lacks those, the ability to decipher those social cues, or if this is because of the nature of having these discussions, well, in his case, always without video, just voice, where interjecting and talking over, because you can't rely on a person's face. You can't catch their eye and do those nonverbal cues to kind of signal that you want to talk. When they do kind of interject and it kind of like gets at the end, right at the end of your sentence, Darth seems to embrace that as an opportunity to accuse that person of over talking him and being rude and trying to shut him down. And it's just, it's just really, he's like I don't know if he really is that raw nerve or if he, is just kind of playing that up. Because it's a.
Yeah. You might want to back it up 10 seconds so that people can pick that up again. I have another point to make. Is he good with social cues? I don't know. We could ask his ex-wife, I suppose. But sorry, we don't want to go there. Well, no, it's true. I think he's like this in his normal life. But you made the point about like when you're conversing with somebody. I'd said, when you're conversing with somebody, this is what happens. But you're right. When it's on the internet, it's different because you don't get the facial cues, the sort of body language cues. But the thing is, you have to be actually more careful. I noticed that Clubhouse will have a lag of anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 seconds. So you'll often get something like where the other guy's talking and then you hear a pause. So then you start saying, well, what I think is, and then you hear him talking again. So you stop and you're listening and the guy continues on. Well, I had my car and let me finish. And like, yeah, stop talking. Yeah, I stopped talking 8 seconds ago. You don't need to yell at me. Most people know how to cope with a couple of seconds of lag in these conversations, and they give the other person a little bit of credit. Like, yes, you started talking while I was still talking, but maybe it's some lag. I'm going to calm myself down. This dude cannot do it.
Nope. And I think it doesn't want to. Right, like I think he would be offended. He is offended when people have brought that up with him. He seems offended that someone would suggest to him that he needs to wait. Like
Yeah.
I'm behaving appropriately. It's these assholes that are stepping on my coattails. I run shit here. You just live here. I mean, that's Darth, pure entitlement through and through.
Exactly. Yeah.
On the balance of evidence without thinking that they have a conclusive demonstration or proof of the existence of God. A person can believe that a God doesn't exist on the balance of the reasons without having a demonstration of the impossibility of a God. And that's my position. I don't think God's an impossibility. Some conceptions of God are self-contradictory. Those I think can be ruled out, but not every conception of a deity, right? Like a deistic God, for instance, isn't incoherent.
So the concept of a self-contained, non-contingent, absolute creator God, his existence would not be contingent or probabilistic. So it would do you no good to say he probably doesn't exist. But your position,
if it was necessary, if it was necessary, then of course it would be necessary.
So your position is no God exists.
My position is no God exists. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So giving me probabilistic.
But that's a provisional. He's already stated that this is provisional, and you can see Darth is quite anxious to try to just blur those or wipe that away. Like, no, if your claim is that there is no God, then it has to be definitive. It has to be 100% certain, and it has to be demonstrable without any kind of without a shred of doubt. And it's like, okay. Do you hold yourself to that standard, right? Like he doesn't, right? Darth doesn't have that same standard. He just asserts that rhetorically his God is necessary, therefore actually it's necessary. And when someone points that out to him, he just balks. And he's like, no, you don't understand. The actuality has to come in order for the rhetorical. I'm like, well, that's just begging the question. Right. And so it's a quite a bit of special pleading, because he's acting as if, like, from my worldview, I've got this on wraps. Your worldview, I'm going to hold you to the Christian standard. That's not the Christian standard. So
yeah. Well, just as returning briefly to the point about probability, and this will be a bit of a digression because these two guys don't actually explore this point that much. But again, that's one of those keywords. When you start saying, well, it's more likely than not that God doesn't exist. Well, he wants to start having a discussion about probability. Now, remember, epistemology isn't about arguing over, well, this is a better way to reason, and that's a poor way to reason. It's an investigation about how reasoning is actually done. So how do we actually reason? I use the example of, you go to cross the street, you look both ways. In your experience, it's more likely than not that using that strategy, you're not going to get hit by a car. Now, ask me to tell you the exact numerical probability within that unit interval. I wouldn't know how to calculate that because I don't necessarily have the background information, the base rates to be able to calculate that. But that's not the point. When we say it's more likely than not, we're not saying that we can attest to a precise numerical calculation. That's not what that phrase means. And they don't necessarily get into a discussion about that. But you notice that when people say more likely than not, Darth wants to start talking about calculation of probabilities, and he'll point out, well, you don't have the background information. And my whole point in raising this is because this is one of those issues that Ozzy understands fairly well, and Darth understands it not at all.
Yeah. And he's going to get more and more frustrated as this goes on, because you're right. They don't dive into that in any kind of detail. And Ozzy does a good job of periodically reminding him, no, it's provisional. And I mean, from what I remember just watching this last night, that just seems to kind of frustrate Darth even more, because he treats anything like that like it's a dodge, and it's really, it's funny to. It's like, well, how do you think people feel when you try to just make these kinds of assertions about reality and about philosophy that you clearly you clearly cribbed from some theological thing that you have, shoehorn it into philosophy or an explanation, try to make it sound like it's common sense and inevitable. And when people shrug their shoulders and wonder, like, where the hell is this stuff coming from? He throws his hands up in the air and I can't communicate with these idiots. I can't believe you don't know this. And it's like, well, not a lot of people have read Van Til or Bahnsen. So, and I don't really think Darth's read Van Til or Bahnsen to completion. That sounds dirty. Never mind.
Reason doesn't get you to a necessary conclusion that there's no God.
It's not a necessary conclusion. I keep repeating it. It's not a necessary conclusion. It's not a necessity. It's not a necessity that there's no God. I think on the balance of the reasons, I think there's better reason to think that there isn't a God.
Is the not God world true?
Yeah, I think it's the case that there isn't a God, just like I think it's the case that there isn't a Bigfoot, but I don't have a proof. I don't have a proof that Bigfoot is impossible. I have reasons to think that Bigfoot doesn't exist and is an invention and merely imaginary.
Okay. So your reason. Okay. So we have good reasons to believe Bigfoot doesn't exist. We have good reasons to believe that Santa Claus doesn't exist. What is your good reason that there is no eternal creator God?
It's
hang on,
exactly the same, formally the same kind of reason that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, if you know how to, I always hit the left arrow thing to back up a couple seconds when it's like shooting a bird in flight, interrupting what Ozzy says. I really want people to pay attention to when Darth uses the phrase "good reason" or "rational justification." He keeps flipping back and forth between being that there is a rational warrant based on the preponderance of evidence versus good reason. Suddenly, all of a sudden, meaning that you have to have a completely sound deductive argument. Now, we don't have, Darth says, oh, well, there's good reason to not believe in Bigfoot. Okay, Darth, trot out for our benefit. Jefferson would love to hear you explain your sound deductive reasoning for your firm belief that there exists no Bigfoot, never, no time ever, nowhere, no how. Do you have that sound deductive reasoning? And now you watch how he quite often switches when he starts saying, oh, well, so you don't have a rational justification for your view. In that sense, meaning you don't have a rock solid sound. And I'm rejecting, all of a sudden now I'm going to start rejecting induction as a rational justification for your thoughts. Like he flips around quite a bit on that issue.
Yeah, exactly. Simus, for you, says, thanks for the belated birthday wishes. It's up to you. I goofed that up, Simus. HogTie caught me sleeping. So, all right. Okay, I backed that up a few seconds. Here we go. And Floyd had mentioned I think Darth sounds a lot like Bonson. Yeah, no, that's fair because there have been videos. I think it was Darth Dawkins' Greatest Hits had done one where I think it was his video where it was comparing. It was like audio clips of Darth and then Bonson, and Darth is lifting stuff verbatim from him. The issue that I think Darth has, I don't know that anybody's really confronted Darth with it, but I have a friend who was set to go to a Reformed seminary, and he didn't, but he was ready to go, and he was a big reader, had read Bonson, had read Van Til, and he's like, well, this Darth guy that you're talking about, is he aware of the divide between Van Til and Bonson? Like, Van Til in his later years was actually kind of upset with the direction that Bonson took the apologetic, and I'm like, yeah, I've read that too. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard Darth Dawkins talk about it, and I don't know that anybody has ever brought it up because most people, I think, when it comes to something like that kind of like it's not super obscure, but it's not it's not common knowledge that how many people are going to read Van Til, a Reformed theologian, and his theories. So yeah, I think most people just take Darth at his word, like, oh no, Van Til said this and Bonson said this and this is how it works, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, until you go into the background. Actually, one of Van Til's biographers, I think, in one of his books, kind of lays out Bonson and Van Til's disagreements in detail, and I think they got quite acrimonious up until the end of Van Til's life.
Your reason, okay, so we have good reasons to believe Bigfoot doesn't exist. We have good reasons to believe that Santa Claus doesn't exist. What is your good reason that there is no eternal creator God?
It's exactly the same, formally the same kind of reason that we think that Bigfoot and Santa doesn't exist. It smacks of human invention and confabulation. What there is a lot of claims about God's nature and attributes, all of which are stipulated to exist, none of which can be demonstrated to exist.
We're just talking.
There's a striking absence of evidence where one should expect to find it, unless you imagine some rarefied God, like a deistic God that you wouldn't expect to have evidence for.
Okay, in which case, your position is there's no evidence for God. Now.
Well, that's part of the argument. Part of the argument is that
I want to focus on one issue at a time, okay, rather than a multiplicity of things, like we're juggling. Okay,
This coming from Darth Dawkins, who is a notorious gish galloper. So I thought that this was really hypocritical. Like, I want to take this one. And I think Darth knows that, if he lets Ozzy go, he's going to get lost. So, I mean, this is him doing what Darth usually does, and he wants to control the flow of the conversation. So, all right.
So you're affirming necessarily that God does not exist, correct?
No, not necessarily that God doesn't exist. That is not my position.
Okay,
it is not necessarily the case that God doesn't exist. I just think it is contingently the case that there isn't a God, right? That is to say, it's an epistemic contingency.
Would be contingent. God, by definition, if we're going
to ontologically, God would be necessary.
Conversation here instead of you over talking me.
Well, no, you're putting words in my mouth. That's why. Okay. So when you put words in my mouth, I'm going to disabuse you of that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Ozzy at maybe his feistiest. I mean, I've seen Ozzy and I've seen him in older conversations with Darth too, and he'll assert this kind of stuff. But I mean, Darth is notorious for putting words in other people's mouths.
Absolutely. I mean, when you start saying, this whole thing about necessity, Ozzy was very, very clear about this. The way Ozzy's talking there, he doesn't talk that way in normal conversations. I've heard him do that when somebody, he's actually, there's one time he talked to me like that, but it's because I did say something that was impolite. I'd stepped on his toes. But when you hear that from a guy like Ozzy, you can get away with it 2 to 3 times. The 4th time you're getting sputted.
Yeah, exactly. I like great. Get disabused, nerd. That's like, yeah. And I think that's the thing. I mean, Darth seems to kind of rely on this for some reason, because I mean, the Discord caves that he was lurking in for so long, he would cultivate rooms. He would only go to channels that would help him set up mods that he so he could make sure that he had full control over the course of everything, and if nothing, things didn't work out his way, he just prune them like a branch. And the interesting thing about that environment is that, from what I could tell, like, eventually he would sterilize his own place. He would add people to the troll list over time, and then pretty soon he had nobody to talk to. And then in the waning hours of whatever channel that he had, the only people that would even bother to show up were new people who had heard about his reputation and went there to troll him. And then he'd get bored and he'd sulk away. And then usually he'd blow things up by getting into fights with the mods, because he didn't have even more power than they'd already given him. Right? That happened with like 2 or 3 channels in a row, or 2 or 3 Discord servers in a row. But that kind of control freak, tendency that he's got, instead of being able to just sort of like, relax and Ozzy can be verbose when he's laying out an explanation. But he's actually being very concise here with Darth, and I think that's because he knows that Darth is only going to tolerate so long of an explanation, so he's keeping it succinct. But I like this. Ozzy's like keeping right after him. He's like, no, you keep putting words into my mouth. And Darth is taking now. This is the point in the conversation where Darth will start taking nearly every opportunity that he can. Like, somebody says something to him, and he'll try to twist it and turn it into something else. Like, aha, I've got you. Here's where you're contradicting yourself. Like, I might be contradicting myself if that were what I was saying. So yeah, and Ozzy's not having it. So this is pretty good.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, but you've been over talking quite a bit. So your position, you're affirming that God does not exist. Okay.
Right.
So just in simple terms, instead of giving me a long prose, I just want a simple answer in 1 or 2 sentences. God does not exist because.
Sorry to interrupt again so soon. This is another opportunity for Darth to mischaracterize this, because here's the thing: I want to know why you don't believe in God, right? Or I want an argument for why God doesn't actually exist, because that's what he's using his vague question. God doesn't exist because. Give me the answer. And I want it in 2 sentences. Well, okay. If you want it in 2 sentences, then what you're asking for can't be a deductive argument for the ontological non-existence of a God, because you can't get that in 2 sentences. That's not what you'd be asking for. If you want it in 2 sentences, then what you're asking for is probably something closer to my belief state. And what if my belief state incorporates things like an absence of evidence, the presence of contradictory properties and descriptions of God, and the fact that explanatory explanations for natural occurrences not only are better attested to in naturalistic explanations, but many of those explanations point away from that creator God, not towards it, right? So that's going to take more than 2 sentences, and that's just 3 that I mean, those are the 3 that kind of come to my mind. I think those are kind of similar to the ones that Massimo Pigliucci gave Darth when he asked him the same thing. I don't know what Oswald or what Oz is going to get into, but when Darth, here's what usually happens. Darth's like, okay, I don't want you to give me like, don't start out with a preview and tell me like your top 5 reasons or whatever. We're just going to do this one at a time. You're never getting to the after. You're never going to progress after that first one.
Yeah. Well, actually, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
it's even worse than that, because what he's not saying. I mean, generally in conversation, if I were to ask you something, Jefferson, that was kind of complicated, I'd say, okay, I'm going to sit down. I want to listen to a thorough explanation from you. Or alternatively, I'll say, well, just give it to me in a nutshell. But that's not what Darth does. He says, I want to hear it in 1 or 2 sentences, and it better be absolutely complete. Even something simple like, how do you make an omelet? Jefferson, explain to me how to make an omelet in only 1 sentence. And it better only be 10 seconds long, and you better not leave out a single detail. Now, Ozzy does something amazing here. And I'm going to say a little bit of background information about the Magic Sandwich Show here. When I first joined the Magic Sandwich Show, there were a lot of comments on the show about, oh, HogTie, shut up ever, right? And I had to learn to bring it in, to have a point when you start talking and to wrap it up within a few seconds. And I sort of got a bit of the reins on that. And then when we were looking for somebody to fill in when Concordance makes some shows, DPR brought up the topic. He says, like, well, that Ozzy, well, we said his real name, that became Ozzy after that, but he suggested this guy's, man, that's a brilliant choice. The other thing that's great for me is when Ozzy joins the Magic Sandwich Show, I won't have to hear anymore about how HogTie's the long talker. So, but okay, I'm making fun of him. I'm making fun of me. But here's the thing. Even people who are long talkers have the sensitivity to recognize what the other person is asking for. You ask me a question, I'm going to try to gauge what level of detail you're looking for. How much time are you willing to invest in my answer? Oh, you want a quick answer? I'll bullet point it for you, and I can summarize it very quickly, and then you can click here for more information. Let me tell you something. People go ahead and make fun of Ozzy for being a long talker, but let me tell you something about that guy. He can summarize it. He can put it in bullet points. He can say, click here for more information if you want more about this. He knows how to package things up precisely in a very tidy package, and he does it in this conversation. Nobody can accuse him of being a long talker in this conversation.
No, yep, not at all. Totally agree. So, and no, I completely agree with you, because I mean, but that's sort of the point, right? That if you're going to Ozzy and you want an explanation from him, you better let him talk, right? Like if it takes him a while to get through it, like that's, you put the dime in, let the song play, right? But if it's a situation, and this kind of goes along with that, Darth is not charitable, even as succinct as Oz is being here. Darth is acting, no, you're over talking me and you're eating up time, and you're taking, because Darth is the one that needs to be doing, the talking. He needs to be steering the boat. So yeah, nope, yeah, completely agree with you. And yeah, let's play this one out and see what's.
No, wait, who's this? Look at now I'm getting offended. Who's this Jay? This Jay Pasigan. What an asshole. So now he's saying I'm a long talker. Ozzy's an asshole. He's saying Jefferson is a long talker. That's it. Can we kick him out?
Yeah, I'll ban him later.
I would spud that guy if you were close.
Spud. Yeah, I didn't know that spud could also be a verb. Thank you, Canada. And thank you, HogTie, for I probably heard that before, but never noticed it, but now I'm going to be using it. All right, here we go. Yeah, it used to be, Jay used to accuse me of doing that all the time. It's like, God damn, why don't you wrap it up?
Oh, hey, Floyd FP is here. How does he not get wrapped up in that net?
Yeah. How can you sum an argument of 2 sentences when you need at least 3 for a basic syllogism? Yeah, exactly, Floyd. Exactly.
I'm laughing. He's not even making a joke. That's a legitimately good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what I mean by that, because it's like oftentimes, like if you think, if this is a great example. I didn't actually catch this the first time I heard it, but I've often said this, and I haven't really had proof until here. But the way that question is asked, God does not exist because, is effective for Darth and other people that use it, because they can shift it depending on the answer they get. They throw it out there, they wait to see what the person thinks is being implied by the question. They're probably going to go with, oh, I'm going to give my reasons for disbelief, right? Which is not the same as providing an argument for the impossibility of a God. When they do that, and Darth, we'll just stick with him, Darth finds that, non-informative, as he likes to say, he'll switch it and then act like, no, the reason I asked you that question, by that I mean, I want a deductive argument for the impossibility of the God that I'm defining, right? Then he switches it on them to basically put them on the back foot. So and he'll let them go for a little while. He's been doing it more and more. He'll let them talk, and almost automatically they'll start talking. And he doesn't give any signals. The question is beautifully vague that way. But in this case, when he's saying like, okay, we'll deal with one point, but I want you to give me your reason in 2 sentences for God not existing. Like, well, that's a different take, right? That means what you're looking for. Usually, if somebody asks that, that's a little bit more specific. Like Floyd FB said, you'd need at least 3 lines to get a proper syllogism out. So he's not looking for an argument. And if he's just looking for reasons, Ozzy's already given them to him. He's already provided his reasons for why he believes that there is no God. And Darth's not paying attention. So yeah, this is just another opportunity. He's doing this to try to steer Ozzy into the rocks, and it doesn't work. So, which is fun, because I'm not giving anything away here. Eventually it gets to the point where Darth just has to progressively overtalk him more and more and more, because he's losing ground.
There's no evidence that a God exists. There are internal contradictions in some conceptions of God. And you wanted 1 or 2 sentences. I'm trying to give you 1 or 2 sentences, right? But you have to allow me to get those out.
Okay, listen, I want to deal with one thing at a time, instead of you launching off into a monologue with multiple bullet points. I want to deal with one thing at a time. So
I can enumerate them, and then we can deal with them one at a time.
Can you not overtalk me when I'm speaking, please?
No. You don't get to dictate the terms. If you don't like the terms of this discussion, you can boot me out. I don't care.
I'm asking you not to be rude and overtalk me. Okay?
He's not being rude, Darth. He's being, to use one of your favorite words, he's being assertive. I love it when someone's assertive with Darth. They must be rude, because Darth's never in the wrong. Darth's never being inappropriate, right? Classic.
Right? Is that asking you too much?
No, it's not. But you don't get to dictate the terms of a conversation in a conversation.
Okay.
Now, if you want to treat this like...
Yeah, I'm just simply pointing out that I want you to make one point at a time, rather than you laying out multiple bullet points. I want to deal with...
There were only going to be 3. There were only going to be 3.
Okay, now, your position will go 1 bullet.
He even asked him just like 30 seconds ago, like, why don't I enumerate them, and then we can break them down in detail later.
Yeah.
He already asked him that, and Darth's not going to yield. Like, no, we're going to deal with this. First we'll deal with evidence so that I can fuck that up. Classic.
Yeah, no. What a great line, though. There were only going to be 3, and when a guy says that to you, especially with that tone of voice, the only thing you can say is, "Okay, sorry, go ahead."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just let it like this basic step, this kind of basic, observation of human decency, just this reciprocation of decency. That's all it would take from Darth, right? Like, just like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, just list the 3, and then we'll go through them step by step. That sounds cool. That's more than reasonable. But no, he's already starting to get into his diva mode, right? Like, this is about how the other person is behaving and how it's triggering Darth's fifis, and this is why Darth has to like drop the hammer on them. Like, remember, I didn't do this to you. This is what you wanted because you're such a weirdo. Classic. The same classic. Excuses for why he's a psychopath. Great stuff. Darth acts like his time is a precious commodity. This old fuck has nothing but time. Even if I agreed with him, I've heard his shtick 1,000 times. I would rather hear what the other guy has to say. Yeah, actually, that's a good point, Brandon McBee. This idea that is part of his shtick, is to act like he's in a hurry, right? I want to speed this along. Well, I don't have all day. Like, Darth, That is precisely what you have. You have all day and all night. You know, you probably were here all day already. So,
Brandon, you know, I got to say, I don't know Brandon, but what a great point. And here's the thing: there's a weird thing that happens in my head when I listen to Didi in these discussions, because, and especially when he's talking to younger people. How old are you? Do you smoke pot? And then someone, look, do you know how many times I've heard this? And this is what happened in my head. So he'll say, I've been doing this for 12 years, 7 days a week. And in my head, I go, that is so sad.
Exactly. Yeah. And yet I don't have time for this. And all these guys do is run out the clock. Like, Darth, you're just
what clock? What clock is he talking about?
Yeah, it's like the clock that you have is, you know, is it's like the, you know, I don't even know what you're on. It's like an age, you know. It's just like, you know, like an age of the dinosaurs kind of thing. Like everything's moving at a glacial pace at this point. But you get him into a conversation with somebody who might know their stuff, and all of a sudden, I've got errands to run. Can you speed this up? I don't have time to listen to 3 points. Only half of 1 point. Give me half of 1 point, you weirdo. And then complain. Well, you didn't give me enough. Get out of here, you troll. You know, like, okay. And
my
then
mom's finished making my dinner. You need to speed this up.
Yeah. Mom made meatloaf. Hurry the fuck up. Like, okay. How long were you here? 18 hours before. Yeah, I'm tired and I need to poop. Like, just say that, you know, mute and go potty. Do something. Make yourself comfortable.
Point at a time. All right. Is that acceptable to you to go 1 point at a time?
We can go one at a time. Sure.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah. All right. Let's go with that.
Okay. Your position is that there is no God because there's no evidence for God. Is that your position?
That's part of the position. That's point 1 of 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's that?
Well, that thing, anytime Darth says, so that's your position, or at the end of what he says, he's wrong. If he ever starts a phrase with, so what you're saying is, he's about to say something that ain't even close to what the other person said.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you could do a drinking game on this. Like, okay, when you hear that cues it up. Now, take a drink if what follows is totally different than what the person actually said. You will need a doctor's attention at some point. Like, you were going to poison yourself.
Now, so your position is that all the facts that you're acquainted with do not stand in causal relations to and from God. Is that correct?
To and from.
I'm not sure what that means. That location.
Okay. When you say there's no
standing causal relation,
when you say there's no evidence for God, have you determined that all facts that you're acquainted with can and do not stand in causal relations to God, or are you just saying the facts are indeterminate?
I thought this was going to get really boring when he got into this point, but Ozzy does a great job of kind of like of getting out of this. I think later he brings up an interesting point in it, one I hadn't quite heard before. But Michael, the Canadian Atheist, thank you for the super chat. Yes, that money will be wisely spent on the Spud Fund. Now that I know the importance of Spuds, you know, other than just, you know, cooking, I can use them to attack people and say Canada made me do it. Kidding. Don't blame me for that, Canada.
No, I'm saying that there is no evidence that any facts in existence stem from the existence of this hypothetical God.
Okay, I don't think you're understanding the question. When you tell me
really?
No evidence for God,
What?
It's either going to refer to just basically.
You wanna go?
I'm sorry, I know I like shooting a bird in flight, but that's one of my pet peeves. That's really disagreeing with Darth. About 20% of the time will elicit the phrase, you're not understanding. And that is some serious horseshit. Like, disagreeing with him doesn't mean that you don't understand what he's saying. A guy like Ozzy, you know, can understand what Darth is saying, and if you give him a moment, can explain why he's wrong. But Darth can't hear it. It is psychic pain for Darth to hear that you know, I mean, imagine being married and then you find out that your wife's been cheating on you for the last 4 years with some guy and she's going to leave you. That pain in your belly, like you just swallowed 100 pieces of bubble gum. That's the type of psychic pain that Darth gets when somebody tells him that he's mistaken about something. And that's why he stutters and stammers. And the only defense he has is, you're not understanding. and I want this to sort of marinate in people's minds. Darth Dawkins, a poorly self-taught dimwit, just told Ozymandias Ramses II, "You're not understanding." I'm sorry that I have to interrupt.
AJ, thank you very much for the super chat. So what you're saying, quote in quotes, equals prepare for straw man. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Deploy the straw man.
We should pay him $5 for that comment. That comment was so good.
Yeah, I would have highlighted that without the super chat. But thank you, AJ. Thank you. All right, let's see here.
Two things. Either you're telling me that all the facts that you're acquainted with cannot and do not stand in causal relations to God. Do you mean that?
First of all, the answer is going to be yes, and I'm not giving anything away. And also, because Ozzy has said that this is a provisional, his belief status is provisional. It is provisionally that way. There is, he doesn't think that there's a God. So this causal relationship between facts being instantiated, whether you're talking about whatever is ontologically undergrounding those facts or whatever epistemologically provides us with the ability to comprehend the notion of what facts are, doesn't matter. Provisionally, those wouldn't have a relationship to a God that doesn't exist. So I think it's interesting that nothing that Ozzy has said to him at this point has given him any kind of pause or caused him to change direction in any way. He's just gone right back into this, and it's like, when I got to this point in the video, it's just like, he's really not learning at all. He's not learning a thing. It's just, this is why, and Darth, if you're listening, this is why people accuse you of just running a script, because you don't adapt well. So.
Well, the script thing, by the way, I've heard that before when people will say, we've been saying this to pre-suppers for years. So again, for the old timers, you'll remember, Tim hosted a show called the Bible Thumping Wingnut Show. And quite often a criticism was, oh, well, you're just going from a script. You're just going from a script. Everything's a script for you. And then they would point out, I think quite rightly, well, so what if we're going from a script? And that's to say, remember, comedians, when they work their material, they go to an audience, they work it, they change things a little bit. Well, this works better than that. It's the same thing in doing these kind of shows. It's the same thing in doing arguments. You start to develop a set of phrases that you realize are a nice compact way of getting your message across. So let's be clear, there is nobody should object to somebody having a script for themselves. But I'm sorry, Tim and Darth Dawkins and anybody else who's accused of having a script. Here's the problem. None of us have a problem with you having a script for you. The problem is that you have a script for me. It's when you decide that Ozzy has to say a particular thing here, or it's going to upset you because Ozzy's going off script. That's the problem.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. So like Darth has, he's worked like a comedian, he's worked out his tight five, but it wasn't that tight, and it's, it was offensive even 30 years ago, and he hasn't changed his material, and he can't figure out why the audience is heckling him, but he just insists on running the exact same routine. Yeah, no, that's a good point though about that. Like, I should probably revise that then. But I think that is the issue too. That's the part that offends people the most. It's one thing for you to okay, you've got this shtick that you want to deliver, that's fine. But what bothers people is like when Darth gets angry because you're not responding to him in the rote way. He needs you to respond. You've got like 3 or 4 choices. That's it. And if you don't respond in the right way, he can't continue on. So he gets mad at you for not for not knowing the script and not. Yeah, and it hurt. Yeah,
it hurts his feelings. Well, notice too that even earlier in this conversation, I hadn't mentioned it then, but now it's sort of worth bringing up, was that he asked Ozzy at one point, he says something like, wait a minute, so your view of the world is the not God position. So you're saying, actually, sorry, Jefferson, let me ask you this. So you live in the US, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the US is the country you live in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are many countries on the planet. The US is one of those countries. Is that the country you live in?
No.
You're messing up my example. You notice that Darth will quite often, like even at the beginning of he dropped it very quickly. He doesn't do with Ozzy as much as he does with other people, but he will repeatedly ask the same question by just switching the order of the words around, because he needs you to answer. Like the first time he asks the question, which is appropriate, if I'm talking with you, I don't know you, I don't know your position, I'm going to ask you some questions, so I elicit your beliefs from you. And, oh good, now I understand your position, now I have some sort of a handle on your beliefs. But if it doesn't fit his script, he's got to go back to that part of it, like hitting the backspace key when you mistype an email. He's got to go back to that thing and ask the question over and over and over again until he finally gets you to say something that's within his script. Whenever you hear him asking the same question repeatedly, it's because he doesn't know. He cannot cope or deal with the thing you actually said.
Yeah. Yep. I want to point this out. This is actually pretty good. Has anyone ever pointed out to Didi that over talking does not mean talking over someone? Yeah, it is interesting that he uses that verb. Don't over talk me. Like normally over talking is when you're too verbose and you're overdoing it. But yeah, no. But that could be one of those things. He's accused younger people of in a negative way. He uses this as a pejorative. He calls young people precocious, as if it's a bad thing. And it's like, okay, a precocious
This
means
is the thing I don't like about it. Jefferson, stop over talking me. In this conversation, there's a lot of that where he interrupts Ozzy, and then when Ozzy doesn't yield, Darth accuses Ozzy of over talking.
Exactly.
And Ozzy's not the only one who does. It happens a lot in this conversation, but to no one's surprise, because he does it to many people. I'm sensitive to it because he does it to me. I don't like hanging out with the guy. But by the way, I've never sought out Darth. I'll be in a room, like I'll be talking to Antonio, and then all of a sudden Darth will come sliding down the bat pole because he thinks Antonio is not being mean enough to me. And he follows me around. Like as soon as he sees me in a room on Clubhouse, he's got to jump in and just be a total dick to me. And that's one of the things he does, is that I'll be talking and he'll interrupt me, and then partway through his interruption, he'll get angry because I'm quote unquote over talking him.
Right. Exactly.
Brandon.
Yeah. Let's see here. HogTie, he asked the same question in order to trip people up to give a different answer than they gave the first time. Yeah.
Also a good point. He doesn't do it as much as Matt Yester. You'll say something, he'll ask you the same question over and over again, and then the one time you word your response slightly differently, oh, well, now you've contradicted yourself, right? Actually, he did it to me once where this Yester, he says, he asked me a question, and I said, well, I think that X is the case. And then later I said, well, like I said, X is the case. He goes, well, now you're contradicting yourself, because now you're saying, before you said you believe that X is the case, and now you're saying X is the case. You're contradicting yourself. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I've only had a couple conversations with Yester, and they were a while ago. And actually,
they were a waste of time.
They were a total waste of time. And I remember I can't remember if they were like on Praise I Am's channel or something like that. And yeah, he does stuff like that all the time. It's very sleazy.
I'm not sure what you mean stand in causal relation. If you mean
what's up?
Sorry, I was late with that. I was saying thank you, Cascade. Solid point.
Yeah, that was. Let's see here. Somebody had just dropped something. Oh, it was Gary Milne has an inverted penis, and Jesus. This was the one. You're not understanding me is also used when you throw him a curveball answer he isn't prepared to deal with. Yeah. Yep. If you try to correct one of the concepts that he's thrown out and you give him something else, he'll accuse, he'll kind of like implicitly accuse you of changing the subject, or rabbit trailing, into something else. Like, no, I'm surprised he didn't accuse that of Ozzy. Ozzy's like blatantly telling him, no, you're putting words in my mouth. I'm trying to tell you that that's not my position. Usually when people do that without telling him, hey, that's not my position, don't put words in my mouth, they just start making corrections. Darth comes in and accuses them of rabbit trailing. Oh, that's a different issue. Like, no, it's not. It was actually part of my original point, but you've decided to transform it into what you want to talk about instead. So
none of the facts in existence appear to be caused by the existence of a God. Yes, that's correct. I don't think any known fact issues from this hypothetical God.
Okay, so how did you determine that any of the facts that you are acquainted with do not stand in causal relations?
Because God is not an explanatory hypothesis. It's vacuous. It's explanatorily vacuous.
No, it's not vacuous. We're talking about the ground of all being. Okay, would it be vacuous?
Yeah,
to say
I don't think invoking the concept of ground of all being is explanatory. It is stipulative. It is not explanatory.
Do you believe that there is something that is primary from which secondary states arise?
You mean ultimately primary? I don't know. That might be the case.
Okay. All right. So if somebody were to affirm that there is something metaphysically primary out of which all contingent things arise, would that be a vacuous belief?
No, that wouldn't be vacuous. No.
Okay. So when we posit God as that primary thing, the only thing that would be different there is that God being primary would be a mind. So the fact that we stipulate an additional attribute, therefore positing God as the ground of all being or being primary to all secondary states, then according to your standard, it wouldn't be vacuous.
No, it wouldn't be vacuous because invoking a mind doesn't explain any physical facts that way, except when you're talking about minds that are physically embodied.
It explains the origin of something.
No,
it doesn't. It is stated. It is claimed to explain, but it doesn't, in fact, explain.
No. Okay. Well, you say it doesn't explain. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, he is saying that it doesn't explain because it doesn't explain that. It's fascinating to me. This is the part that I like the most, where Ozzy has already said like, no, that's stipulative, right? Like he's defining things, is that like, well, this is how we know it. I define God in this way, and this is how we know that these things can be thus and so. It's like that's not explanatory at all. You're just trying to define that into existence and then making the claim, but you can't demonstrate it, and you can't just make the claim that you can make the claim that it explains things, but it doesn't explain anything. It's an empty claim, and there's really nowhere to go. At this point, it's really kind of like this kind of shuts the whole thing down for Darth. But of course, he's not going to take that. He's going to keep going.
Can we pause on this point for a second, because this has been something on my mind for a few years, and I want to just for a moment, because actually part of the reason I bring this up too is because Jefferson, I've wanted to ask your thoughts about this, because I've listened to your commentary. These want-wits, want to talk about these things, and you clearly have a bit more background in this. But just so I want to ask you and talk a bit about what is meant by the terms. This explains that. This has explanatory power. X accounts for Y. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is something that I had not learned in school. And what a wonderful, people who know my time on YouTube, what a wonderful position I'm in, because I get to talk to Ozzy when I want. I get to talk to Floyd FP when I want. And there was a time when I messaged the two of them separately, and the three of us got to sit down and talk about this. And actually, we never finished the conversation. I actually never got a complete answer from them. But I asked them, I said, what does it mean to say that X explains Y, that X accounts for Y? And the reason I bring this up, and by the way, I apologize, this is going to be the occasion I'm going to be a little bit long-winded, because this is such a powerful, important point. In the minds of these evangelical apologists, if you say, well, how is it the case that the universe exists? Well, because God made it. God explains the universe. God accounts for the existence of the universe. And I said, well, what does it mean? And is that really, does positing a God somehow improve your explanatory power? So let's say I go down to the Costco and I buy myself the big jumbo box of Pizza Pops, and I X-ray it, I CT scan it, I MRI it, and it's just a box of Pizza Pops, and there's tape on it and everything. I put it down in my freezer, and it stays there frozen. And then one day, I go down and pull out a Pizza Pop. You pull out a Pizza Pop. You open it up, you put it in the microwave, you heat it up, you go to eat it. There's a $20 bill in there. Now, it's a $20 bill Canadian, which is worth, what, $8? Anyway, there's a $20 bill in there. And you ask me, you say, hey, HogTie, how did this can you explain what accounts for the $20 bill being in there? Now, here's my answer. My sister, Sarah. That's my answer. That's my answer. Telling you that I have a sister named Sarah, how does that account for the $20 bill being in there? Does it explain anything? And okay, see, I heard that breath from you. Again, that's a conversational cue. You're like, hey, HogTie, I want to say something here. This is going to take me some time to wrap up, so I'm going to yield because I'm a normal human being. Jefferson, go ahead.
No, I wanted to kind of branch off that because I think this gets to something that I've been thinking about for a little bit, and it's the fact that Darth and J. Robin, a lot of these guys, are less preoccupied with notions of how, which tends to be something that skeptics think about, right? It's not so much like, especially since I think a lot of skeptics tend to be kind of in tuned, or at least more interested in kind of empirical journeys, right? Like measuring things and learning how things work, right? They want to know about the functionality of things, how they function. Why, the big question of why, though, is really what a lot of these guys are doing. So when you gave that example, like, how is it that this $20 bill came to be in this particular pizza pop? I don't know what those are, but that's starting to sound better.
You don't know pizza pops?
Yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't know what that is, but if it's I can imagine what it is because you said you got a giant box of it at Costco. So, but when you said, yeah, my sister Sarah, right? That I think actually is more accurate than maybe because that actually gets to the point where their preoccupation is with who's responsible, the responsible party, not how God made the world, just that He did.
No, that doesn't cover. Yeah, no, okay, yeah, you're right. You're getting my point. So
Yeah.
if I were to ask you, you're a non-believer. You believe there are electrons. There are electrons in the universe, several, probably more than 24. What is the process by which electrons got created? I don't think you can explain that.
Yeah.
Now, Matt Yester, for example, will tell you, well, God made them. Okay, I got you. But how did God make them? Telling me that there's a God that created electrons doesn't explain to me or account for the existence of electrons. By the way, just so you know, I don't have a sister named Sarah. I don't have any sisters at all. So asserting I found a $20 bill in a frozen pizza pop doesn't somehow prove the existence of my sister named Sarah.
Well, now that you've burst that bubble and you don't have a sister named Sarah, you're not going to tell me next that there are no pizza pops, right?
I got to ask the live chat. When I've thought of this example more than a year, I've been thinking about this, and I thought the frozen pizza pops thing is a great example. You're not going to now tell me that Americans don't know what pizza pops are. You people know what poutine is.
I know what poutine is. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, but you pronounce it like a dink. But so you know what poutine is. But do you guys have pizza pops?
I live in Michigan. Isn't Michigan basically like Ontario's Mississippi? I mean, so yeah, we get it. It's just we have it, but it's kind of, we have poutine, but it's like really, really jacked up in most places. Unless you go to some of these artisan restaurants where they kind of zhuzh it up, they put like field greens and stuff on the top of it. It's fucked up. But no, yeah, but no, pizza pops. If that's I'm not like I don't eat a lot of food like that, so I could just be the one that's ignorant of it. I'm not sure what it is.
Pizza on a stick.
So Michael Michael, the Canadian Atheist. He's saying, he's like, what? You don't know what pizza pops are? Floyd FP though has actually I never heard of a pizza pop until tonight. So I think this is a Canadian American. Huh? It's okay. It's not a hot pocket, right?
Okay. Well, you know what? This was good. I tried it out here because now I realize this example failed because instead of talking about what I think is an important philosophical issue, I talked to Floyd FP. I talked to Ozymandias Ramses II, and I asked them this question, and we've never finished that conversation. And now I'm asking you, Jefferson Spatchcock. I'm asking your audience, and I've derailed the whole thing with a mention of pizza pops.
I may have had something to do with that because I was fixated on the pizza pop thing. But you mentioned food. I'm gonna lose track.
It's still a more illuminating conversation that had I posed this question jointly to Darth Dawkins, Matt Yester, and what's that idiot J. Robin. This is still better than that conversation.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah,
it's not a pizza roll. Stop saying that. That's the third person to say that. It's not a pizza roll. Can we just play the video? I've ruined everything.
I looked it up. Oh, okay. It's like a pizza shoved into a samosa. That's interesting.
It's more like a, what's the Italians help me, when you fold it, calzone. It's more like a calzone, because it's not flat. Why are we talking about this? Could you play the video, please?
Well, I looked this up, and I will share this with the audience if they're curious.
Okay, let's do that.
It sounds like pizza pops are only in Winnipeg at a plant in Fort Garry. That's where they're made. The food is only sold in Canada.
What?
Yeah.
My mind is blown.
Yep.
It's a Canadian.
Oh my God, there's a poutine-filled pizza pop. What the hell? Oh, that is... I'd ask you to send me some, but I'm sure that's logistically impossible. Well, I plan on making a trip into Canada sometime soon before the weather turns cold. So when I do, I will look for some pizza pops, probably bring them home. So
okay, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Now that I've ruined your show, can I totally go off topic here? I got to tell them, the Canadians are all celebrating this week. The Americans must be happy for us. Everyone must have heard. Did you hear? Canada and Denmark have finally signed a peace treaty, and the war is over.
Oh, I can stop having those night terrors will end. I was convinced I was going to have to volunteer, join the Canadian forces to fight against the scourge of freedom that is the Danes. But the Danes, I'm so glad I don't have to do that.
We were going to nuke them until we remembered we don't have any nukes. But we got the pizza pops.
You guys get into a war, and then we find out, like, Europe has a shortage of canned ham and bacon thanks to Denmark being at war with Canada. All right, here we go.
That's right. Now, I'm happy to elaborate on why that would be the case.
Okay. So saying that what is metaphysically primary is a mind is vacuous, but if we said what is metaphysically primary is not a mind, that would not be vacuous?
That too would be completely empty.
Oh, okay. So somebody.
In other words, to say that there isn't a God isn't to offer an explanation.
Of course,
neither is an explanation. One doesn't purport to be an explanation. The other purports to be an explanation, but is vacuous.
Yeah, no. Offering that there is something that is metaphysically first or primary to account for secondary states is not vacuous, is it?
That's not vacuous. That's not what I'm saying is vacuous. Okay. What I'm saying is vacuous is the claim that some disembodied mind explains the physical world. That I take to be vacuous.
Why is it vacuous?
It's vacuous because we don't know what it means to say that a mind can bring, for instance, something into existence. For instance, when the Bible says that God spake and brought things into existence, such as light, by saying, "Let there be light," that is not an explanation. That is a stipulation that God did X, and then
of course it's an explanation.
Y happened, but that's not an explanation.
Of course it's an explanation, okay? But the point is an explanation that you don't like. We don't have to have...
If we said God farted...
Listen to me. I've been very patient with you.
What?
He's been patient? It's just been nonstop. I like the fact that he got Ozzy to say fart. We said God farted. The fact that Ozzy is getting that, like, what's the best way to... I don't want to describe it and get him wrong, but yeah, I mean, if he's getting to that point, like, he's getting frustrated with this guy. Like, I don't know how many times I have to tell you that this has no explanatory power. Like, you could say it like a dozen more ways, but it's just not getting through.
Oh, well, that was the point, actually. So when I went into the rant about what is meant by explanation, I'm contemplative about this, and I've sought help from Ozzy and Floyd FP to explain to me what's meant by explanatory power. But the point I forgot to make was, when you talk to, or maybe I did say it, yeah, I kind of did. When you talk to these evangelical apologists, they say, well, God explains everything, and you go, okay, well, how? They're like, well, because he does. Like, in their minds, they can't provide a justification or a better verbiage that sort of helps me understand that point better, because in their minds, they can't understand the principle that maybe God's explanatory power, quote unquote, is vacuous. So I think the problem that's happening here is that Ozzy's making a very good point, is that, claiming that God spoke it into existence or farted into existence really doesn't explain anything. And Darth can't understand it. The concept that somehow that just this God thing, posited God, somehow doesn't explain something is confusing to Darth. It's not that Darth disagrees. He legitimately is confused by the concept.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think you're right, because it doesn't seem to really occur to him that, like, well, God is a sufficient explanation because it's God, right? And if you dug down into that, the only thing that he could really do, and I think Ozzy's even talked about this years ago, because this is starting to sound kind of familiar. Darth would just start appealing to the properties of that god. And then somebody like Ozzy would be like, okay, cool. So now you're giving me a description of the same thing, but you're not, that doesn't explain why it does this kind of stuff. Like, as if those properties, like, well, like the example, like, you know, how did this $20 get in this particular pizza pop? My sister, Sarah. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really explain how or why she put it in here. Well, she's generous. She's kind. She's extremely smart. She was educated.
Yeah. List her attributes. Yeah. It's in her nature.
PhD
it's in Sarah's
McGill.
nature.
It's in her nature to drop $20 bills in the, like, yeah, but I'm looking for an explanation. I'm not looking, like, anybody can say that something's got the nature of doing that. You know, well, unicorns routinely, poop $20 bills on your lawn. Just keep it out for them. It's in the wee hours of the morning. Somebody will come by and snatch them up.
That's a solid point. PhD from McGill. My sister Sarah's smarter than that. Come on.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought McGill was like you guys' Harvard, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe Queens or
Okay. Sorry. Secular Pagan Mom, thank you very much for the sticker. Appreciate it. Let's see. Floyd, but in our worldview, it makes perfectly good sense, even if we don't know how God does it. Greg L. Bonson, the myth of neutrality lecture. Okay, well, there you go. Straight from Bonson's mouth. It makes perfect sense, even if we don't know how he does it. Like, really?
It's a great point. Can I say briefly of Floyd FP? That's not the first time he's done that, where I'll say something or somebody else will say something, and then he'll trot out a Bonson quote or some other quotation. Okay, like there's something smart sounding about people who can bring forth quotations. And Darth Dawkins, hey, have you ever heard his quotation from Kyle Nielsen? Yes, you have, 87 fucking times.
And he gets it wrong all 87 times.
Yeah, I know.
The emphasis is totally wrong. Yeah.
I know. And then it goes ... and he leaves out, oh, are you going to bring this up? He leaves out the next thing that Nielsen says right after the quote about God could still exist. But I just want to set that in contrast. You can talk about that whenever you want. Floyd FP, when he does it, it's on topic. It's not the same quote every damn time. And it's illuminating and lucid. Like, I don't know how he does it.
I think he's got like a program. I don't know. he's got something where he can, like, it's all programmed in. He's got that stuff saved in some quick keys somewhere. Let's see.
I've been very rude much of the time. Okay. I had tried
actually, at this point, since we're 13 minutes in, there's not much more of this. I think it's just whining at this point, because I don't think he. Well, no, he muted him, so they do talk a little bit more.
Control my tongue, and I don't.
Well, I think somebody else muted him.
Constantly.
Yeah, somebody else muted him, and then he, which is interesting because they muted him, but Darth seemed to know exactly when. Like, I think somebody must have texted him, but yeah, he has not been kicked yet.
Being rude and over talking. Okay, would you please stop that? Okay, now. Saying it's vacuous, simply adding, is it? Let me get this really clear. Is somebody invoking that something is metaphysically first and primary as an explanation of why there are contingent things? Is that vacuous? You have to unmute your mic. Ozzy, you have to unmute your mic.
Ozzy don't got to do nothing.
Ozzy doesn't play that.
Ozzy, in the lower right-hand corner, you have to unmute your mic.
Was it just me when I was listening to this last night? I just pictured, like, it was hard to do, but I just pictured Ozzy sitting in his chair with his arms crossed, just grimacing, like, son of a bitch. Like, I'll unmute when I goddamn am ready.
Yeah, I'm not going to put up with this being muted this way. Conversation.
Yep. He's pissed. Justin, thanks for the super chat. DD talks about causal relations. If you ask him if he can think of a scenario where causality is not immutable, you can absolutely nail him on that. Yeah, good point. where causality is not immutable. Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know if anybody's ever really called him out on that, although he almost could have gotten there with one of the PhD philosophers that he talked to, the one that he supposedly owned, of the many that he owned, called him out on that. He was like, well, what kind of, I can't remember if it was a causality or it was a modality. Yeah, either way, I don't want to get it wrong, but something like that.
Stations should be able to admit people talking over each other.
You were being muted. You got muted. I didn't mute you. One of the other moderators did. You
well,
were
that's okay. I'm not putting up with that. I'm not putting up with that nonsense.
Please don't over talk. Well, listen, you have been very rude. I've been trying to be very polite and cordial with you. Okay. I understand that there's always going to be some crosstalk, right? Now, when you ask me not to overtalk you, I immediately shut my mouth. But no. Persistent.
No, you didn't immediately shut your mouth even when you were putting words in Ozzy's. Like, come on.
Hey, would you please,
when you ask me a question, you have to wait for the answer. When you mischaracterize my position, you're going to get interrupted.
We're going to mute you again if you're going to be a
well, you mute me again and I'm gone. Mute me again and I'm gone.
You're going to get muted if you misbehave and you overtalk again. Okay.
Now, I will overtalk you every time you mischaracterize my position.
Or you'll be
every time, Darth. Every time.
Every time. You're gonna catch a spud. You're gonna catch a spud.
Tread carefully, Darth. John, thank you for the super chat. Don't fully understand, but what Justin said. I'm 90% there where Justin's at, but I think it could use some unpacking.
Can I tell someone? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. No, do that first, and then I.
Oh yeah, okay. I thought this is where he was going. Justin, thanks again for the super chat. For example, faster than light space-time travel would break a chain of causality. Yes, yeah, it would. So,
There's a semi-funny story about Ozzy when so Nephilim Free. Some people might know him. He used to actually be a pretty famous YouTuber. But then he sort of disappeared. He's still doing videos. He gets about 62 views per video. But there was a point in time he fancied himself quite an amazing Christian apologist and anti-evolutionist, creationist expert, And when Ozzy started to rise, and people, the thing is, Ozzy never got super famous. Ozzy is just super respected because you hear him talking, you go, that's a smart dude. And he has a way of putting things. So Nephilim Free decides he's going to take this Ozzy guy down a peg or two. So he ends up doing this video where he's complaining because Ozzy wouldn't come to his beck and call. And he starts calling Ozzy a coward because Ozzy wouldn't show up when Nephilim Free challenged him.
Oh, God.
Well, Ozzy, in a conversation that I don't think he knew was being recorded, Ozzy starts explaining, look, by the way, one of Ozzy's famous quotations is, you get the conversations you deserve. Yeah. If you just want to go out and argue with idiots, you're going to end up arguing with idiots. Ozzy can't bother himself to do that. Look at all the great things he has in his life, all the ways he can spend his minutes. This is a guy who fills every minute with 60 seconds run, if you catch the poetic reference. And to be called out by hillbilly Nephilim Free, he couldn't bother himself. So he's explaining in his Ontario erudite way that he couldn't be bothered to go to this guy's beck and call. And partway through this explanation to the people, he's holding court one day in some conversation that he doesn't realize is being recorded. And he says, well, I don't need to go to those things. I'm not anyone's bitch. and I want to clarify, I'm not misquoting him. There are people out there who think he said, I ain't nobody's bitch. That's not what he said. He said, I'm not anyone's bitch. He actually used proper grammar. Right? This is true. That's the way he said it, because this is what Ozzy's like. And okay, I make fun of his, again, he's Ontario educated. I'm a rural Albertan. Fine. But the thing is, he's so honest to what he's saying. And honestly, people of the audience, just think about it for a second. Why are you at the snap of fingers beck and call? Oh, Darth Dawkins wants to talk to me. Nephilim Free wants to talk to me. Matt Yester wants to talk to me. Well, I need to tell my children to get the hell out of my hair so I can go talk to this idiot. No, guys like me, guys like Ozzy, we don't care. We don't care. You want to talk to me? Fine, I'll find some time to talk to you. I enjoy it. You don't like it? Kick me out? And then kick me out. I don't care. I live a life. And that's just Ozzy.
This is slightly off topic, but I did want to highlight this from Benghazi. Nephi would get drunk and talk about how the races shouldn't mix back in the
Benghazi.
day.
No. Benghazi, stop it. You're ruining Spatchcock's show because you said a thing that's going to make me say the thing about Voxley. Look, I'm an old man. Nobody here knows what Voxley is. Voxley was one of those early days chat services. It wasn't like this where it's broadcast and stuff, although there was Vic Mackey 24 who was recording a lot of stuff. But one day Nephi came into our Voxley room and he starts going on and on about evolution or whatever. And we start asking him the question, what is a kind? What is a kind? Is it species? Is it order? Is it genus? Like, what are you talking about? Nephilim Free actually believes that horses and zebras are of the same kind. And by the way, for those who aren't into biology or cladistics, I know that horses look like zebras, but I'm not going to wreck Spatchcock's show, worse than I have already by pointing out to you that zebras and horses are actually pretty far apart on that thing. Yes, yeah. Okay. So he says they're of the same kind. And yeah, they're related, but you know what? We're also related to carrots. Like, it's a big tree. Horses and zebras aren't as close together as you think they are. But here's the thing. About 8.5 minutes later in that conversation, I know the figure 8.5 minutes because Vic Mackey 24 recorded everything. Drunken Neff starts talking about how the white people shouldn't marry black people because white people should marry only within their own kind. Horses and zebras, the same kind. Black people, white people, not the same kind.
Oh, good.
Let me mute while you.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Yeah. I totally believe that that Nephi said that, and I would have believed that he said that. I believe that he would have said that even sober.
Well, no, that's his actual thoughts. He's an uptown racist. Yeah.
And I do enjoy the username Vic Mackey because that must have been back in the day when S.H.I.E.L.D. was still kind of a thing. The show The S.H.I.E.L.D. That's the main character. That was Michael Chiklis' character. Yeah, that corrupt cop. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I love Michael Chiklis. I loved him in The Commish. I never watched The S.H.I.E.L.D. I love him as an actor. So that was the name. Vic Mackey 20. I like the guy very much. I never knew where he got the name.
Yeah, I believe Vic Mackey is the name of that. That's the name of that character. Yeah, if you get a chance, that show is pretty dark. And it's very dated now, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thank you very much for the super chat. People, do either interact with Pizza Pockets at HogTie Champ?
Pizza Pockets? What the hell's a pizza pocket?
Yeah, sorry, Bebo. It's Pizza Pops in Canada.
Yeah, but give him his $5 back. That's what the hell kind of a comment was that?
No, cost of doing business and getting that wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you, Bebo. Appreciate that. All right,
I know him too. He's a good egg. Oh yeah, let's let her rip. What were we talking about in here? Explanatory power, or what was the topic? Ozzy being rude?
Ozzy now is asserting that he's getting tired of. He's about to do another Canadian thing. I think instead of saying "fuck around and find out," he's going to say "fuck about and discover," which I pay real money to hear him say. But here we go.
Okay.
Every time.
Carefully, listen. You need to be better behaved. If you're an intellectual,
you need to be more better behaved.
More better.
You need to be more.
Wow.
Oh my God, that just got tattooed into my gray matter. Now that is getting used in a future video soon. So look out for that, folks. Okay, here we go.
You present yourself to be.
I'm not an intellectual. I don't purport to be an intellectual. I'm just an ordinary guy.
I'm not claiming that you're claiming that with capital letters, but you present yourself as somebody who's educated with a master's degree in philosophy commenting on these issues. Now, I'm going to ask you again.
That is not how I present myself.
Okay, listen. All right, listen. I'm going to ask you one.
I got to say, in his defense, that's true. Like, I mean, playing advocate for this on this, not that I need to, but most people are always kind of impressed to find out that Ozzy has these credentials. He's at least got a master's degree in philosophy. So everybody else makes a big deal out of that. Ozzy does not. So, and that's an important point to make. And he does not present himself that way. And this is more, kind of putting words into his mouth. Darth is aware of Ozzy's reputation because other atheists talk glowingly about him and will frequently cite the fact that he doesn't just have a worn out library card. He actually has some academic training in this field, just short of a PhD. And they make kind of a big deal about it. Like, okay, well, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, and let me know what you think. And now Darth is like, well, you present yourself as an academic. No, Darth knows that he's an academic because other atheists talk about it, and other apologists that found out that he had that reputation wanted to make him basically wanted to turn him into a bearskin, into a deerskin coat kind of thing. They wanted to turn him into a trophy. So that's Darth, just being Darth, just being creepy. So
one more time, all right? Now, if you want to persist in being obnoxious and rude, you can wait till I'm done to correct anything that you think I say is incorrect. But
Darth, if you were a person of goodwill and conversation.
Goodbye. Okay. All right.
Wow.
So here again, we have another atheist being a complete troll in the conversation. Okay, because he doesn't want to have an adult interaction back to back.
Yeah. If you're called a troll, you're just a human being alive and breathing, who Darth wants to talk to. That's pretty much all you.
And disagrees with, yeah.
Yeah, those are the only requirements necessary to get on Darth's troll list. Be a carbon-based life form that gets on his nerves. There's a comment coming up from the guy on the right there, Truthy. There's a comment coming up here that I thought was just really cringy, but well.
Wait, comment where?
Yeah, Truthy guy, the cartoon character with the blonde beard, and
he says it out loud. Oh yeah, sorry, I thought you meant there's a type. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, he's actually gonna speak it here pretty quick.
The old atheist tactic of being rude and obnoxious. I perfectly understand that you may want to accuse me of, quote, misrepresenting you or not citing you properly, but you don't have to machine gun overtalk me every time I'm speaking. Okay. So, this is a guy that a lot of atheists look up to. He presents himself as more being philosophically oriented, and his conduct here this evening was as bad as the obnoxious teenagers that we run into who are atheists on Discord. Wow. So I'm sorry.
No, they would have told you to get wrecked, boomer. That's what they would have said. Like, at no point did Ozzy say get wrecked, boomer, or go fuck your own face or something like that. That's what somebody one of the teenagers might have said. Not that I know what the kids say these days, but whatever.
Sorry that occurred, but he was asked many times to stop being rude and being obnoxious, and he decided that he wanted to get kicked, that he was going to continue to be rude and obnoxious. Okay.
Now, what's sad here is that he did state issues that he saw, right? Incoherence, contradictions, no warrant, basically some type of inductive or abductive case that everything's just made up, which could have been interesting to explore. But yeah,
yes.
It's just
well,
sad.
You see, what he was.
What's sad? Like, he just leaves it there. I'm like, oh, it's sad. Like, it's sad that the guy that you're hanging around with is too much of a lunatic to actually let Ozzy get his answers out. Like, and the truth is, like, oh yeah, this guy was actually getting into some topics that I would have liked to have heard him talk about more. Like, truthfully, I mean, that's a perfect opportunity to be like, Darth, you need to shut your pie hole and actually have a conversation with somebody before you accuse him of being, a troll and out to get you. Right? Like, I mean, the thing that we know about Darth is that everybody is out to troll him. Everyone is a drunk and a deceiver and a delinquent and a dullard. And it's like, okay, the common denominator to your disappointment with absolutely everyone that you run into is you. Like, if you run into assholes all day long, the common denominator is your assessment of people. And Truthy just like, oh, it's just too bad. Like, what's too bad, Truthy? That Ozzy was out of control with assertiveness. Like, how dare Ozzy assert, like, don't put words into my mouth. You need to let me speak. You need to provide me time to answer a question after you've asked it instead of interrupting me and then repeating the question. Yeah, Ozzy was clearly being unreasonable and trolling.
Can I explain this to you? Okay, I do not understand about not even the rest of the world, just the Americans. Why do you people make fun of Canadians for the sorry thing? The word sorry doesn't mean I regret everything and wish it hadn't happened. It just means I respect your feelings. That's all it means. So if I interrupt you and you start talking, go, oh, sorry, go ahead. Right?
Yeah, there is actually a reason for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are, I don't know why, and I don't know if it's like a regional thing, but there are people that have, and I don't know like what pockets and subcultures in the United States have this, but this has been a theory of mine because this comes up a lot. When I grew up, in my particular neck of the woods, people basically, and maybe it was because I grew up relatively close to Canada, we did that, right? Like, sorry just meant like the same as like excuse
Michigan,
me, or pardon
Michigan,
me, right?
Wisconsin, they do it, yeah.
Yeah, we do it up here in the frozen Midwest. It's not a big deal. But I found as I started like getting out into other parts of the U.S. that went like for a lot of people, just saying the word sorry carried with it an admission of blame, an admission of guilt. So they won't say it.
No. Okay, well, okay. So if I say no, Jefferson, you misunderstood my point. You go, oh, sorry, go ahead. Like as soon as somebody tells you that the way you're reacting or the way you're representing my position doesn't actually reveal how I feel about the situation, you should feel like, oh, well, I want to react to how you actually feel. Sorry, go ahead.
That. Yeah,
but
yeah.
He can't do that. Darth can't do that.
No,
he
but
starts attributing to Ozzy all these motivations that Ozzy doesn't have, and oh, well, he was trying to get kicked. No, he wasn't trying to get kicked. He wasn't trying to not get kicked. He was doing a super good job of not caring if he got kicked.
That's not necessarily like an American thing. In Darth's case, like, I mean, people speculate about this, but this is sort of like connected to like whatever personality disorder that he's suffering from. But for him, if he were to do something as simple as just give that little bit, he perceives that as a weakness, and he doesn't owe that to anyone he disagrees with. That's why he won't do it. When that happens, it gives him the opportunity to project that back onto the person, and then frustrate them with it. And then when they lash out at him, he can use that as an example. Like, look, folks, look at this person. I mean, he's a total gaslighter. I mean, this is what he does.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right about that. But I will say Ozzy doesn't care because he is not anyone's bitch.
I am no one's bitch, sir. Yeah.
What he's simply trying to do is debate by aggressiveness and obnoxiousness, and just by a fiat claim. So what he says is that God being a mind is a vacuous explanation. Well, says who? And he goes, well, because it doesn't explain anything. Well, but then he turned around and he said, somebody invoking that what is metaphysically primary is not a mind, is the ground of all being. He said, well, that's not vacuous. So if we say that the what is metaphysically primary is personal or a mind, well, that's vacuous. But if it's impersonal, it's not vacuous. You see his double standard? Okay.
No.
Now, but then
there's no double standard there, because he already explained that to Darth. He explained it.
He said
to
the
him.
Opposite. He explained it as the opposite of what Darth just said. Holy crap! Did that just happen?
Well, Darth needs to listen more better.
He was talking out of both sides of his mouth. If we go back to the recording,
yeah, Ozzy is talking out of both sides of his mouth. You just summarized what Ozzy said and reached the opposite conclusion. Fantastic, Darth. Fantastic.
Because if he says that what is metaphysically primary without a mind or not personal is vacuous, then he has no ground of being to speak of. So his whole philosophical world crumbles, because whatever he invokes in terms of contingency doesn't come from anywhere. Right? So notice what he said, that he wanted.
That's a weird argument. Not that I need to get into that too much, but it's like, okay, so it's God or nothing? That seems a bit fallacious. Right, there's a zero-sum fallacy kind of going on there. Like, oh, well, when he wants to invoke anything that's contingent, well, if it's not God, they didn't have anything. Like, this is the common one for Darth, and I haven't actually heard him say it quite this blatantly in a long time. I've heard him stumble with that before. I don't think he believes he's stumbling, but it's like, no, that doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that just because, especially if you're dealing with someone's epistemology, it doesn't follow that because this person does not believe in God, that any quote unquote contingent thing has nothing to be contingent upon. It's like, I mean, if Darth, I think if Darth really understood what the Munchausen trilemma kind of lays out with those three horns, then he wouldn't be talking like this. But when he says stuff like that, it makes me think like, okay, for him, the Munchausen trilemma is you get three choices: foundationalism, infinitism, and coherentism. You better be team foundationalism because the other two are definitively wrong. And it's like, that's not the point of that trilemma, man. That is not how that works. Like,
yeah, he doesn't get it. Yeah, and the thing is, it's classic. Like, sorry, when was the Munchausen trilemma introduced to the public? Was it 2014? Like, you know, how does he appoint himself such an expert in philosophy and not get some of these first year things? I'm sorry, I got to point this out. You have someone in your chat, and I'm not acquainted with him or her, P. Barnes, spelled very weirdly. Mm-hmm. Literally every comment has been like a really a lucid, clever comment. And also, I'm a huge fan of the original P. Barnes. Nice speech, but you're not getting in. But you pay attention. There's very clever stuff going on there. Really insightful observations.
Yeah, I'm lucky to have an audience that usually provides lots of insightful comments in here. When he said, "I think Darth's conduct shows that deep down he is super unsure about his views." Yeah, that's yes.
Yeah.
I've always felt that. Yeah, and I noticed this too because I was looking at the Qui-Gon Jinn behind the rainbow. I was like, did someone just join Darth in a room with a rainbow flag? This won't end well. Yeah, and I think
it's stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's stuff like that that's so good.
I think this wraps up before he goes after the Sam guy, but yeah, I know damn well whoever the Sam person is like, yeah, rainbow me up just for Darth's room.
Yeah. Sorry, I want to address P-Bard's earlier comment about the Darth being unsure. Darth is, Darth will express how completely sure he is. He's so confident. There's nothing about him that's unsure. And yet you can hear in everything he says, c'est trop fort, je dois claquer vos têtes. Thank you. What the hell was I saying? The English part.
I was going to say, could you don't bother repeating the stuff?
No, French, I'm yelling at the kids because they're, they're yelling at the kids. It was the confidence. That was it. It was the, being sure of yourself. Probably my third or fourth conversation. Alex Malpass and I, also quite good friends. I've not spoken with him for more than 2 years now, but what a nice guy. I just feel so blessed, like being a good friend with him. But he was one time in one of those hangouts, and it wasn't recorded. It was just people talking casually. We're sitting around chatting about some of these apologists or whatever. And he'd made a point about something in logic, about how when you reason a certain way and then you follow this stuff with predicate logic, this other thing turns out to be true. You need to be mindful of this. When he finally brought that speech in for a landing, I said to Alex Malpass, I said, you know what? You are 100% completely wrong in everything you just said. There was a lengthy pause, and then he went, okay, how's that? And I pointed out to everybody else who was listening. I said, notice his reaction to that. The dude has a PhD in philosophy. And when I said to him he was wrong, he was set back on his heels for a moment. But the first thing he said when he caught his breath, the first thing he said out loud is, I'm sorry, please explain to me how I'm wrong. Because he wanted to know what my problem was with what he said. He wasn't wrong about any of it. But people who care about the truth have that ability to take a breath and to say, wait a minute, am I mistaken? It's like when you're driving in traffic, am I in the right lane? And like if I'd have made up something and told him why he was wrong, he'd have said, HogTie, you're full of shit. You need to shut your mouth, and that's fine. But he was willing to listen. When you tell Didi he's wrong about something, it brings up that psychic pain like he's swallowed 200 pieces of bubble gum, and he cannot tolerate it.
I like to think it's the burning and itching and irritation that comes with a full diaper that you just won't change, Yeah. That's what he does. He fills that diaper with rage, and then but he won't leave the station. He's gonna prove that somebody is wrong on the internet. And the way that Darth's brain works, everybody that's not Darth is wrong on the internet. So yeah, he's doomed. I think he's doomed to one day expire in front of a computer monitor, yelling at somebody. Because he drew the wrong conclusion.
And having done nothing with his life. Go ahead and praise yourself for your 12 years. You've been 7 days a week doing whatever. I have not been 7 days a week on the internet, but I have children. Hi. Yes. Thank you for your contribution to the show. Yay! Jefferson says hi. Okay. All right. Roll that video.
To eliminate vacuous concepts. Are we all clear on that? That he was opposed to vacuous concepts? Right?
Sure.
But then he said, and somebody can correct me if I'm mistaken,
speed this up a little
that he
bit.
said both offering a metaphysically primary impersonal source or ground of all being and a metaphysically primary personal source would both be vacuous. Well, then that means that there's no identifiable ground of all being from which all secondary or contingent states derive and depend. Therefore, whatever he asserts is, can be, or cannot be, by his own standard would be vacuous, because it doesn't offer an explanation as to why anything is.
Neither does asserting a vacuous like it. You're not providing an explanation. You're just providing a source, pinning it on there, and then defining that as the cause of things. But they're explanatory. This is the whole point that Ozzy was trying to make. It's explanatorily vacuous. Like, okay, God did it. Doesn't explain shit, right? That's literally the same thing as saying it was a magic spell, or the robot whose dreams we live in dreamt us, right? And like, actually, that might be a better explanation. But
or the robot farted.
Yeah, or the robot farted. But yeah, this idea like, oh, there's a God. Well, God did it. Like, that's terrible. And this is what he's got to cling to, because I would like to assume that they know that this is a weak position, but I really don't think they do. I think because of guys like Van Til and Bonson, they're now in a position where they think that they're on the high ground, so to speak. You know, they've got this figured out, and all you other ones, you skeptics have to try to knock me off this hill. And it's like, no, it still boils down to, at the end of the day, God did it. And that's not an explanation. It's just a stipulation. It's just a claim that you can't demonstrate. But then he's turning around and saying, okay, well, you need to meet some criteria of demonstrability and certainty that his claim of God did it doesn't reach. It's just insane. The only way that you could do it is if you came up with is if you ended up meeting his particular worldview with a worldview of your own, where you just did what he hates and say, yeah, but I'm a deist or I'm a pantheist, so I believe that there's this thing that is responsible for all this stuff, but it fucked off. Or, you know, it's consciousness is an emergent property of a universe that's all, you know, is all actually unified. It's all one. That, you know, there's a universal field of consciousness that emerges from all living things, you know, kind of like the Force, but with an IQ. But he won't entertain that. Like, oh, well, that's just how do you know that? That's just like, well, I know it because the emergent consciousness revealed this to me in a way that I can know it to be certain, which is to say, it wouldn't reveal a lie to me. So that gets him out of the whole Descartes demon kind of thing. They won't accept that. There's actually somebody had recommended it before I started on either capturing debates or Clubhouse debates. One of his two channels, he's got a full length discussion between J. Robin and a Clubhouse user named Sasha. It's on Clubhouse, the two of them talking, and Sasha just runs J. Robin ragged with this, and it's funny. He just uses the exact same points, the exact same techniques, the same exact arguments that Darth would use or J. Robin would use, but he uses it with Platonic ideals, and J. Robin does not catch on. And when he does, he starts delivering. He starts getting into territory where he's going to start bringing up objections, but they sound like atheist objections. It's funny.
Actually, it's a great watch. Yeah. Hey, by the way, as we go into this would be the denouement of their discussion. I want to point out a comment that T.S. Mayer comment, another person who, like, if you're ever scrolling through a comment section, you see T.S. Mayer, you're going to want to pause and read that comment. Just very, very clever observations. In this one, on this video that we're watching, T.S. Mayer comments, obviously the best part of this one, obviously the best part is the one where Didi owns every point Ozzy presented after he kicked him out.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm done talking to this guy. Now I'm going to talk about him because he lives rent free in my head from now on, from now until eternity. But
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Well, the
yeah.
second sentence is he being Didi. Didi is surely is the master when arguing against his moronic straw mans of someone else's arguments. And
Yeah.
what you just said is exactly right.
And that's the bad thing about this, because this is the bad habit, right? Like, he'll do this right after he's kicked somebody, but then he'll do this later on, like after this room's over, if he's still up, if he's in another room, he'll if it gets under his skin enough, he'll keep doing it. And it's like, okay, when you have these conversations with yourself about the person you last talked with, do you know what happens when you get into a conversation with another person you disagree with? You start having a conversation with yourself while you think you're having a conversation with that other person. That makes it even easier for you to start putting words in other people's mouths, which is why it's necessary to engage in the conversation with the person while you can, not kick them and then run your mouth and talk a bunch of shit about them when they can't offer up a defense. And Darth does it in rooms filled with sycophants who will not challenge him on his bullshit.
Yeah, and it's both those points you just mentioned. He will strawman the person's arguments, but Darth cannot resist also embarking in these weird personal attacks. Right, and I mean, just there was a comment here. I'm trying to find it again about Shannon Q. Daniel Cooper,
just like Shannon Q lives rent free in his head.
Oh, did you just share that? That was the one I was looking at. You just shared the same comment. And Daniel, I'm sorry, I have to correct one thing about it. You misspelled her name. Her name is Shannon Q Ducklips.
Yes.
Like, he hates her so much. He hates her so much.
She laughed at him. Yeah, she made him feel small.
That was belittling, wasn't it? Oh, actually, by the way, anybody who saw that conversation, I'm sorry. So Shannon Q, by the way, is Canadian. She's Atlantic Canadian, which is technically Canadian. But I get that she said things. She laughed at him. She said things that hurt his feelings. I get that. But remember earlier when I said about that's what we're like. If you're going to be a dick, then one of us is going to do something to hurt your feelings. And it's not meant to be disrespectful. It's meant to be honest with you. Shannon Q Ducklips is one of the most honest people I've ever met in my life. And she comes by it naturally.
Yeah. Well, I think what made it worse too is that, given some of her training, right, after a while having that conversation with him, she starts treating him like kind of not even like a patient, right? Because she's just talking to him over the phone, but it's like what she's observing in terms of his behavior. She's laughing because it's like watching, you're at an aquarium and there's that one weird fish that only swims upside down, and she's just like, and it's sort of that point like, look at this, can you believe this? Look at how goofy this thing is, and you could tell. Like, I mean, that was the closest I think the world got, YouTube got, to hearing Darth grind his teeth so hard you could hear it through the mic. She really triggered him. Oh, that was good.
It was, yeah.
I wish I could have, if he had not been so rude and obnoxious, he could have remained in the room. But then I would have showed him how he has a double standard, because then I can ask him, when he invokes,
you would have, of
what is, can be, and cannot be, what is it fundamentally and foundationally that would dictate what is, can be, and cannot be? Well, for him, he cannot answer that question. He made it very clear that offering something that is metaphysically primary, that is impersonal would be vacuous and untenable.
Okay, now he's actually getting closer to something that might border on. I wonder if Ozzy would agree with this. I hope he watches this at some point. But so he's getting to this point where, okay, you need something metaphysical to dictate these things be thus and so. But that's the part where I bring up, like, okay, if the metaphysical foundation necessary for all existent things, the creator God that's responsible for absolutely everything, is necessary in order for these things to be actualized in the world. And not only did this thing cause them to come into existence, but his sustaining power maintains the universe in the way that it's going. That means that if that's your explanation, Darth, that God is putting his power behind all forms of evil that occur in a fallen world. He's not simply permitting the kinds of things that he probably shouldn't want to happen, the atrocities, the murder, the assaults, the rapes, these kinds of things, but his energy is actively putting that out there into the world. Because otherwise, if it's not, it doesn't have a foundation, right?
Yeah. No, solid point. A solid point. I'm just trapped on the whole thing about well, I would have told him that. So you kicked him out of the room. You kicked him out of the room, and then now you're telling us what you would have done had someone not kicked him out. And like, this is like the guy, again, I'm an old man, I'm going back to what things used to be like, but this is the guy, have you ever seen this happen? The guy who uses the back of his hand to like wipe the blood off of his split lip and say, you know what, if that chick wouldn't have split us up, I'd have totally kicked that guy's ass.
Exactly. I'm going to look this up real quick because I've not heard of this. First domino fallacy. Every causal claim requires a separate argument. Hence, any slipping to be found is only in the clumsy thinking of the arguer. Huh, okay. Is this, the slippery slip fallacy. But maybe a little bit different. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. All right, here we go.
Therefore, he admitted indirectly and implicitly, without realizing it, that therefore whatever concepts that he invokes that are not vacuous, that are meaningful, don't derive from anything identifiable or defensible that's fundamental. So by his own standards, rationales for things ultimately are vacuous because they have no explanatory power, right? Remember how he said God offers no explanatory power? Well, what is it that's fundamental that gives explanatory power as to why anything is fundamentally what it is, can be, and cannot be? Well,
Hear the preoccupation there, the word he keeps using? Why? Not how.
Yeah. Yep.
Why? There has to be somebody who's responsible for all this, and it better be the God of the Bible. Floyd F. Pira, if you deny my metaphysics, you must have a metaphysics that explains every mystery of the universe. Yeah, okay, that's what you mean. Yep, that's definitely Darth's bag. Yeah. All right, he's just about done assassinating Ozzy after the fact. God.
The answer for him is there is nothing identifiable. So you see, he shot himself in his own foot.
When?
And I have a strong suspicion that he decided to be obnoxious and belligerent because if he remained cordial, the vacuousness of his rationale was going to fail. Notice that
super projection.
Yeah, like if he had just taken it, if he had just shut up and allowed me to run roughshod over the conversation and dictate how. I mean, this is how really disconnected this guy has gotten, and this is where guys like Truthy, Matt, and Theo down there could hold him accountable and be like, yeah, about that. Normal people don't normally treat, adults don't usually treat other adults like that because that's actually how bar fights start. So if you expect him to be respectful and be cordial, you need to actually reciprocate. It doesn't do you any good to even when you notice in that kind of thing, when Ozzy started to get a little heated and his tone changed and the volume of his voice goes up a little bit, what did Darth do? Darth starts talking in that real kind of creepy, obsequious voice, like he's cool. And it's total performance. Jay Robin does this too. It bothers the shit out of me. It's a complete fucking act. Like, I'm perfectly calm. Listen to the way I'm talking. Someone who's unhinged and completely out of control wouldn't talk like this, right? Like, no, somebody who's completely unhinged and out of control and fucking dangerous would talk like that to make superficial nitwits think that they're the good guy, right? It's just a superficial camouflage. And not a very effective one. Like, well, don't I sound like I'm like, yeah, well, you sound like you're trying to sound like you're calm. You sound like you're trying to present yourself as easygoing, but everything that we've heard up until this point has demonstrated that you're fucking not. And you've misrepresented this person's points, sometimes directly after the person's made them, and oftentimes before they've had a chance to finish them. So who really looks bad in this exchange? And then by the time the person's gone, all they can tell his simp says, well, if this person had just, it's always the other person's fault. If they had just been more nice, if they had just, been more better at talking, or however he puts it, then like, keep in mind, this goes to what he usually has, like, do you want to be kicked? If you do this, then I don't want to remove you. I don't want to have to mute you. I don't want to have to kick you.
Oh, I hate that.
But if I do it, it's your fault. Like, that is that is a completely psychotic rationale. Completely.
I know. Look, ask his ex-wife how many times she heard the phrase, "Look at what you made me do."
Yeah. This is it's the exact same mentality you hear behind guys who push their wives or their moms down the stairs. Like, I didn't want to hurt you, but you made me. Like, yeah, you're fucking wrecked. You're broken, and yeah. Let's hope there's a pill or a program for you. Pills.
Mhm.
It would probably be a whole routine of things. But yeah, that's the thing that I think that's what bothers people. I think that's one of the reasons why, because there are people that have told me, like, the only way I can listen to this idiot talk, because he's just so fucking obnoxious and he's so fucking toxic. I can only listen to this kind of content if I'm watching one of your channels. Somebody break this stuff down, pause it, and then point out his bullshit in real time. It's like, yeah, and I always suspect that when I hear that from somebody, it's like, that probably is a person who's a little bit better acquainted with abuse or abusive personalities than I am, because I can see that kind of shit really triggering somebody. Like, and I'm not saying triggered in some kind of like, oh, you're weak kind of thing. Like, I mean, legitimately dredging up some trauma. Listen to this jackass behave like this, because he's a fucking mess. He's an abusive twit. So.
First, he tried to say that his invocation that God doesn't exist is probabilistic, right? And
Provisional.
I showed him how fallacious that was.
Okay? Did he? Did he get that? He didn't get that far. He didn't say he did no such thing. Ozzy said it was provisional, and Darth sounded confused. You had to keep correcting him, like, I didn't say necessary. Necessary is not my position. And Darth's like, he's slamming on the brakes, like, wait, what? Where do I go next? Okay, well, we'll just get him on the whole facts thing. You can't account for facts.
Either God is or is not. Either you're affirming God or you're not affirming God, or you're claiming to suspend judgment. Right? So it even someone like him who claims, and I don't doubt it, that he has a master's degree in analytic philosophy, resorts to the old tired and worn out tactics of being rude and obnoxious in order to evade their position to be questioned. Notice how he was machine gun talking with the bullet points, and he was very reluctant and reticent to go through.
There are only 3
bullet point.
He never got to the bullet points. You never let him, Darth.
There are
That's
only
hilarious.
3, and he got a quarter of the way through the second one.
Yeah,
there are only 3.
There are only 3. Yeah, he was rapid fire going through his bullet points. Like, Darth, come on. It was only 10 minutes ago, for fuck's sake. Come on.
I know. It's already rewriting history.
And then he started to get obnoxious and telling me that I wasn't dictating the terms of the conversation, when all I wanted to slow down and go through each bullet point at a time.
That would have been a great point for somebody to be like, name Ozzy's bullet points.
Yeah. Although I want the audience to vote on what their favorite line was. This is now the second time I've heard this thing. And I swear, for some reason, my favorite line is, there are only 3.
So, I mean, what an embarrassment for this guy who puts himself forward as being, philosophically understood. Anyway, welcome to the room, Sam. Go ahead.
What an embarrassment.
Did you catch
what
that,
an
Tom
embarrassment.
Rabbit? Hope you upload that to YouTube.
Yep.
YouTube. What an embarrassment. And you know what? I hope Ozzy's wife, who also, what a wonderful person. I hope his wife doesn't see this, because she'll just like, I can't stay married to you. You're such an embarrassment.
Well, the guy on the internet said so. Like, yeah, you don't have to worry about him. He's had way too many. Well, actually, I think the problem with him is that he's had too much Taylor ham in his life. That's probably not something you get in Canada. It's not something that you get nation.
I don't know what you just said.
Taylor ham is a kind of meat product that's like in New Jersey. And the reason I mention is because I think he currently lives there. I know that's where he's originally from, at least. But I can vouch for this, because he got into a conversation years ago with Christopher Mouty, and they started talking about Taylor ham. They started going back and forth on it, and I think that was the conversation. Mouty had said something about he was like kind of chummy with me, and he was having this conversation after the last time I had talked to him. He was just like bitching me out and calling me like a pervert and an asshole and all this other kind of stuff. And the next thing he's like, "Oh, you're from New Jersey? Oh, how about that Taylor ham? Do you like that stuff?" Like, yeah, he's weird. But
what's up with New Jersey? I don't know about Taylor ham, but I know I know 3 on the internet. I know of 3 Garys from New Jersey, and one of them nuttier than the next. Like, is New Jersey like your Cape Breton? or something? Like, is there something in the water that's a problem that we need to address? Like,
is Cape Breton a spot where everybody in Canada punches down on?
Oh, definitely. Especially if you're from the rest of Nova Scotia. The Capers ain't hooked up right. I gotta tell you.
I think that's the thing in like I don't know if it's all of Australia, but I think it's like in New South Wales, Sydney and all of them. They complain about people from Queensland, specifically like the Brisbane area. Like they're like, yeah, those people are nuts. And yeah, I don't know why. I don't know how they got that reputation. Yet New Jersey, I don't know. I mean, New Jersey is kind of famous for being one of those states I think a lot of people want to leave. If you're from there, if you're born and raised there, the goal is to get out of New Jersey and get into New York City somewhere, or to flee the East Coast entirely and go to California, or maybe Seattle. Yeah, but it is weird because it's between them and Pennsylvania. I've noticed with online stuff, there's some really interesting personalities that come out of New Jersey, and there's some really weird ones that come out of Pennsylvania. I think that one guy, DeRoy Cruz, I don't know if you've ever seen him.
Oh yeah.
Drag does videos on him, and Carlton Winston.
I'm a Dragnet Silvis fan. What can you do?
He DeRoy, I believe, is like born and raised in the Pittsburgh area, and there's been several that I've run into that are less prominent, but it's just been weird. And I think in the Pittsburgh area somewhere there's like a big group of Black Hebrew Israelites that are kind of maybe a little bit more outgoing with their ministries, for lack of a better term. And I think the Christians that butt up with them in real life, they I don't know, they got some back and forth. I don't know. It just seems weird. It's like I expect, to get more like kind of fundamentalist rigor out of people from like, I would think it would come from somebody from like Alabama or something like that, but that's not who I see on here. It'll be somebody from like Pennsylvania or Ohio or New Jersey or, I don't know, Indiana. That's odd. I think that's because maybe we're a little bit more outspoken in some of these states or something like that. Some of the Atlantic states and the Rust Belt, we can be quite mouthy. So, but anyway, folks. Yeah, HogTie, thanks for doing this with me. This was fun.
Oh, you can't thank me. Oh my God, I had so much fun. This was so bonkers. I haven't done a show for so long, and I saw this topic like the trifecta. This is like the DD being an idiot. This is Ozzy being not just smart. Okay, great. Go on about how smart Ozzy is. He's a stand-up dude. And it's the Jefferson Spatchcock show, and I got to do it on a Friday night, and you can't thank me. Dude, this was so much fun.
Well, I'm glad that you jumped on. I don't often do guest hosts, but this was a lot of fun. When you wrote in there, you were kind of careful with your words. I'm like, no, come on, we got to do this and I'd actually forgotten. Like, we'd never actually verbally met each other. We'd only just like talked in comments or something.
Oh, do you want to wrap up by telling the audience the funny bit about what happened? I sent a message. I didn't say, hey, can I join your show? Can I join your show? I wrote this very sort of like, I invite you to invite me onto your show. And I gave a list of reasons with a couple of good reasons, but the biggest reason was when I listed at the end is because I would have a shit ton of fun doing it. And I spelled ton, Tonne.
Yeah. And not only that, it was extremely Canadian because you like kind of led with like the reasons why I shouldn't. Like, I know I have a reputation for talking too much, so I understand why you don't need me on your show. Like, I'm like, this is the most Canadian the most Canadian self-invitation I've ever seen in my life. This is great.
Yeah. And the weird part too is you said, well, show up 10 minutes early. We can do our sound checks. We got to do some pre-show stuff. And we just started talking. And it was just such a casual conversation. About halfway through, I say, oh, look at us talking like old friends. By the way, nice to meet you. I don't know if the audience knows this. Jefferson and I have never met before.
Yeah, we didn't know.
This is literally the first conversation we've had. You just watched, people.
Yep, just the occasional acknowledgement and comment threads and stuff. And I've known HogTie because I've seen him in a lot of recorded videos, and I know him from the comment section from over like Drag's channel and stuff like that. This is the first time, but this was a lot of fun. So yeah, if more HogTie, I'm going to keep you in mind. I know that you can't do these all the time, but I will keep you in mind if Ozzy gets caught in another conversation with somebody. It probably won't be Darth. I would imagine Ozzy had a gut full of that. But if Ozzy gets into one of these channels and I don't know, gets in with Jay Robin or somebody like that, and it gets recorded and it's on there, I'll reach out to you and let you know, like, hey, we might need to do Ozzy on Clubhouse too. So if you can't make it, I'll understand really in advance.
No,
but
that's
yeah.
really good. No, it's not that I can't. It's that I don't care to. I think this whole thing's a waste of time. And I'm sure what you just said was awesome, but I got distracted by Daniel Cooper pops in another comment. He asked, are there pineapple pizza pops? And that comment is extremely funny. I'm going to tell you, no, there aren't. And I never thought of it. But I am writing a letter to that company in Winnipeg today because that's got to happen.
Yeah, Hawaiian pizza pops. I mean, if you got poutine pizza pops. Wait, is poutine pizza a thing? Is it popular?
No, it's poutine. No, oh my God.
Okay, so why do they have a poutine flavored pizza?
I used to like you before you said that. What's that? Sorry, what?
Sorry. I'm just kind of getting confused because it's like, okay, well, you've got a poutine pizza pop, so I'm thinking like in Canada, is poutine pizza then a thing? Like
no. Okay, there's cheese and there's cheese curd. Okay, I can't even.
Does the pizza pop does it have the French fries in it? Does it have potato in it?
No, there's no. It's a calzone. I don't know.
Right.
Why are you doing this now?
But potato in it, then it would be like what do they call this? Pakora or something like that? It's like an Indian thing, right? Or like a pierogi. Sorry.
Oh no! Now you're going west. Yeah, the pierogi and no, that's where I'm from. I'm from the land of the pierogi and the pierogi and the kubasa and stuff like that. That's where I'm from. But anyway.
Yeah, because you're over in the mountain area, kind of.
Is this what we're doing? Yeah, is this what we're doing your show?
Yeah, we should probably wrap this up. But I do want to highlight this. Thank you again for the $10 super chat, Australian people. I don't know what's happening with the economy, but that might be worth like $30 American by now. I haven't seen what's been going on. You don't know? Look up John Bjelke Peterson, leading minister in Queensland for a good long while. Where do we start? I'll take your word for that. Look, I don't doubt that Australians aren't onto something. Other Australians are onto something when they say that. I think the term that they use for people from Brisbane is that they're crazier than a bag of cut snakes. I'm inclined to believe them. I don't doubt that. But yeah, I'll look up this person, or is it J-O-H, Joe Bjelke Peterson? I'll look him up and see. I know Australia has more than its share of wackiness. Probably not quite as wacky as the United States, but up there. So yeah.
Sorry, crazier than a bag. What did you say? Bag of cut snakes? Cut snakes?
Yeah, crazier than a bag of cut snakes. Yeah.
Dérangé comme un sac de chat. Crazier than a bag of cats?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, something like that. Pizza pops, pizza popes.
No, that's the French. That's the French spelling. Thank you.
Pizza pope.
Thank you, AJ.
I'm thinking of like.
My
I'm just thinking of something like shaped like a Pope's mitre and then stuffed full of ingredients. Can you make that happen? If you send them one letter about the Hawaiian pizza pops, let them know that I want one that's shaped like a Pope's mitre, like just because it's sacrilegious and sacrilegious. Anyway, folks, with that, thank you, AJ, for that. Thanks, everybody, for the super chats. Thanks for, as always, the lively conversation in the live chat. Like, subscribe, share, do all that kind of stuff, or don't. It's a free country for now. Again, thanks to HogTie for being on here. Links to the original video from Tom Rabbit's channel are in the description, as well as a link to Ozymandias' YouTube channel. So if you're interested in how he did here and you want to hear more of his stuff, most of them are as HogTie described. He's sitting in a chair and going over a philosophical topic or two. They're pretty good. So check them out. Also, keep an eye on the spot. I'm going to be doing a video tomorrow, scheduled One Way, the guy who's famous for having the wife that yells in the background, quite a shouty wife. And she's also quite honest, and she kind of calls One Way on his shit, including calling him by his name. Well, One Way had a drunken Clubhouse hangout a week or so ago, and in it he basically demanded that everybody come out to play and like take him on, and he wanted to talk about biblical slavery for some reason. I witnessed quite a bit of it. My brother recorded some of it. He had a conversation with Jack Burton, who's a frequent commenter here, fan of the show, and I am a fan of his. He had a little bit of a conversation with him. My brother did a video about their exchange, or a little bit of it. I don't think he got to Jack Burton's conversation part. Anyway, long story short, One Way is quite thirsty to get a rebuttal from Jay I have offered to host Jay tomorrow. We're probably going to be doing this 11 a.m. my time, so 11 a.m. Eastern. We're going to go over some of One Way's more recent shenanigans. They are weird.
So the slavery thing, was this the thing about a week ago? Like I had jumped in there at one point, and there's a part where I'm just ranting about what are you people talking about, and I use the phrase
I forgot
owning people generation after generation. Did that get recorded?
I don't know. I don't know if he caught that part. I have to check with him because there's a couple things that happened. So first, my brother recorded. He got there late because I was in there. I think I was in there a little bit before you. I'd forgotten that you were in the comment section. But yeah, we were commenting on it. He was clearly trashed out of his mind. He was repeating things. He was talking in circles. Yeah. He was just completely wrecked. But my brother,
wife kept reminding him how wrecked he was.
Exactly. Awesome. I've had 2 beers. You've had more than that.
By the way, okay, you know what? Late in the evening, you're on a Friday, you're pulling back a couple. I got you. But this was like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and he was wrecked from the night before. Now, I didn't know anything was being recorded. And yes, I was in the comments section. It's when I joined because I was asking them, what are you talking about? I get that there's ancient people had slavery, but don't talk about, the servitude thing and whatever. We're talking about people owning people generation after generation. I wasn't even addressing their arguments. It was just my confusion over how are you justifying this? I don't know if I was part of the part you're talking about, but I think I know which conversation you're talking about. It's mental, absolutely worth a watch.
Yeah, so we're going to go over a little bit of that. I don't know how much of because my brother recorded about 90 minutes of it. When I was in there, I alerted my brother. I was like, one way's on the sauce, and he might be on the roof. You better get over here and start recording this. And he showed up and recorded most of it. So we might get into the exchange that he had with Jack Burton, which Jack Burton keeps it refreshingly to the point, but One Way is just spiraling at that point. But then after that, following my brother's video from the previous weekend, he had some friends on, and they went over what he recorded on Clubhouse. A One Way responded, and so I think we're going to be doing a response to his response, which is also, it's not nearly as drunken, but I think it is still, surprisingly, I think it's still this kind of, he's still inebriated in that one because he does some strange things in it. But yeah,
I might wait to see One Way's wife's response to One Way's response to your response to his thing. That's what I want to see.
I swear, One Way's wife.
I will super chat the hell out of that.
She would have more. She'd be in the top 10 YouTube channels if it was just her doing videos once a month, one video a month where she just tells us what her husband Russ is up to. Like, yeah, he smokes pot. Yeah, he drinks too much. Like, yeah, you tell him, Mrs. One Way. Yeah, get him. Anyway, folks, with that, keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be scheduling that one soon. And good night, everybody. We are going to get out of here. Let me do the little brand thing and play a little intro out, and see you later, folks.